Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Chapter 1. This work involves some risks. 1. Lincheng City, North Ancient Estate, Unit 7, Floor 6. A warehouse manager with an annual salary of 10 million? Fu Qian looked at the letter on the table, expressionless. Urgently hiring warehouse manager for daily management tasks. If Mr. Fu is interested in accepting this job, please sign the work badge and wear it to start working from home immediately. Note: this job involves certain risks. After reading the contents of the letter, Fu Qian shook the envelope, and sure enough, a black work badge fell out. Huh? 10 million a year, and I can do it from home? What kind of magical warehouse is this? Receiving this first thing in the morning made Fu Qian feel utterly annoyed. But then again, how great it would be if it was true. Being a warehouse manager shouldn't be too busy. Good pay, light work, close to home, it's the ideal of ideals. Money isn't easy to come by these days, and with his poor financial situation, he was about to face the destiny of eating dirt. However, Fu Qian was always good at finding joy in suffering. Thinking that he had nothing better to do, he got an itchy hand and signed his name on the work badge, then hung it around his neck with exaggerated seriousness. The next moment, everything went dark before his eyes. When his vision returned, the computer desk in front of him was nowhere to be seen, and Fu Qian found himself standing in a place resembling a warehouse. The colossal space, the dim lighting, and the absence of windows made it impossible to tell whether it was day or night. A row of tall shelves stretching to the ceiling extended neatly into the distance. The shelves were evenly spaced with variously sized silver-white boxes. This is actually an online job? Is the work badge some kind of VR device? Fu Qian felt his imagination was under attack as he tried his best to understand what was happening before his eyes. Identity verification successful. Name: Fu Qian. Age: 20. Today's work begins. Job responsibility: daily warehouse management and maintenance. Ensure items are correctly contained. Note: due to the special nature of the stored items, if you see any illusions during work, including but not limited to tentacles, eyeballs, patterns, steals, etc., consider them as routine leaks. Do not panic. Follow the instructions to recontain the items. A series of emotionless voices sounded beside his ear. Tentacles, eyeballs. Something's not right with this picture. Fu Qian looked at the boxes on the shelves. What the hell is inside them? And no matter what, the packaging seems pretty tight. How could anything leak out? Beep! It was as if his question had been heard. In the next moment, the space nearby twisted, and a giant blood-red eyeball slowly emerged. Warning. Leak incident. Item number 3048. Name: Blood Haze. Today's work updated. Enter the containment scene of 3048. Complete recontainment. In the upper left corner of his field of view, a string of small text popped up continuously. Is this what they call a leak? Before Fu Qian had time to comment, the blood-red eyeball slowly turned its direction and fixed its gaze on him. Almost instantly, Fu Qian felt his brain was hit by a tremendous shock, and his consciousness was rapidly pulled away. Entering containment scene. Full Moon Garden. Containment achievement condition: survive for 1 hour. Each entry into the containment scene will consume 1 sand point. Current sand points, 20. If sand points drop to 0, you will permanently lose your sanity. I knew 10 million wouldn't be so easy to earn. 0 sand points means irreversibly losing my mind, so does that mean if I fail 20 times, I become an idiot? That seems like a rather severe work-related injury. 1%, 5%, 50%, 98%, 100%. Full Moon Garden load complete. For a long time, you've been tormented by an increasingly severe pain. Just as you made up your mind to travel to a distant land in search of a cure, you found yourself trapped in an even more terrifying predicament. Identity: patient. Skill: none. Weapon: none. You're awake? As he regained control of his body, someone spoke nearby. Fu Qian tried to turn his head and found that he was lying in bed. At the bedside was a wizened old man, hunched over, with an inexplicably sleazy expression. Don't worry, you'll be well soon. After all, our medical skills here are unique. Heh. If you hadn't added that string of laughter, It would have been more convincing. Fu Qian squinted his eyes and didn't speak. And what do you mean ill? I'm perfectly fine and bouncy, ouch. 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 The moment the thought arose, an indescribable pain swept over him, nearly rolling him off the bed. Is this the pain mentioned before? If the way to complete the task is to endure this pain for an hour, that's just inhuman. Barely resisting the urge to curl up into a ball, Fu Qian followed the old man's pointed direction and spotted a long infusion tube. The tube trailed down from a stand nearby, with the needle inserted in the back of his hand. Are they actually treating my disease? But isn't your equipment a bit too simple? What the hell is all that yellow stuff on the outside of the infusion bottle? Human oil. Wait, the color inside isn't right either. The scary red couldn't possibly be blood, could it? So, let's begin. Before he could say anything else, the old man turned the valve of the infusion tube on. Fu Qian's vision instantly darkened. Containment failed. Survival time, 1 minute. Evaluation, useless person. Your performance fully illustrates what it means to hesitate and be defeated. Reward, none. I died just like that? There was definitely something wrong with the stuff in the drip. Returning to the warehouse, Fu Qian was in a less than pleasant mood. That evaluation was a bit insulting. In front of him at that moment, a misty fog formed a portal in the shape of an eyeball, which he tried to touch. Would you like to spend 1 sand point to attempt containment again? Current sand points, 19, so I only have 19 chances left? Yes, Fu Qian was not someone who gave up easily. Sand points reduced by 1, entering containment scene, current identity, patient, skill, none, weapon, none. Are you awake? The kindly voice of the old man came again, sending a shiver through Fu Qian. Awake your head. Enduring the severe pain, Fu Qian leapt up from the bed with a carp's strength and swiftly reached for the infusion tube. Crack. The carp only managed half a flip. An unimaginable force surged through him, and like a noodle, Fu Qian was slapped back onto the bed from midair. Lying in bed, Fu Qian grunted twice, feeling as if his spine had shattered into pieces. Lie down nicely. The old man's voice was unwavering, and Fu Qian's sight darkened once more. Containment failed. Survival time, 1.5 minutes. Evaluation, useless person. It is well known that to hesitate is to be defeated, to act hastily is to fail outright. Reward, none. This old geezer is seriously unfair. He can barely stand straight, and yet he's so strong. Returning to the warehouse once again, Fu Qian expressed sincere admiration. Sand points reduced by 1, entering containment scene. Actually, I feel a lot better now. The third time entering, Fu Qian deeply realized he couldn't overpower the situation and decided to try reasoning instead. Oh? The old man paused his movements, scrutinizing Fu Qian carefully. Does it not hurt any more on your body? It doesn't hurt anymore. Uttering this lie, Fu Qian felt his eyelids twitch. Pa. Half a minute later, the old man shook his head, looking at Fu Qian with eyes full of care for the mentally challenged. Your expression has betrayed you. Young man, do not hide your sickness. As the hand holding the valve moved, Fu Qian's vision went dark once more. Containment failed. Chapter 2, Does this insurance hurt? 1 No way out? Having returned to the warehouse, Fu Qian realized he might have underestimated the difficulty of this job. In just a few minutes, his sand points had dwindled to 17, and at this rate, becoming an idiot was just a matter of time. The key issue seemed to be that neither the hard approach nor the soft approach was working. Wait a second. Considering the old man's inscrutable combat strength, taking him on directly was certainly not going to work. But the soft approach. Judging by the old man's last reaction, there was at least some room for communication. As long as communication was possible, convincing him with reason wasn't out of the question. It's just that the guy's eyes were obviously keen. Even if he clenched his teeth and claimed he wasn't in pain, his expression had already betrayed him. Expression. That's when an idea suddenly struck Fu Qian, and he yanked off his work badge from his chest. In a flash of his vision, he was back in his familiar home. Without any hesitation, he grabbed his cell phone and left the house. Sir, are you looking for someone? Half an hour later, someone at the reception desk of a maternity center carefully eyed Fu Qian. I heard you have a device here for experiencing the pain of childbirth. Yes, do you want to try it? The receptionist's eyes lit up immediately, as if she was looking at a piece of meat on the chopping board. What a good man. Whoever becomes your wife is truly fortunate. Is it guaranteed to hurt? Fu Qian interrupted her, asking the question he cared about most. Guaranteed. Hurt? His question obviously shocked the receptionist, causing her smile to stiffen. Of course, our device is the highest grade on the market right now, with top-notch simulation effects. Then let's get started. Fu Qian blinked. I can't wait. Soon enough, Fu Qian found himself lying on the instrument, or rather, the torture device. A few middle-aged women gathered around him, with one who looked like a director flipping through his paperwork. Mr. Fu, our device's pain levels go from 1 to 10. We'll start from the lowest and increase gradually. If it's too much for you, just say stop. If you're ready, we'll start from level 1. No need, just crank it up to level 10. Fu Qian yawned. It was a joke, given that once inside, there would be no time for acclimatization. What mattered was the ability to adapt to sudden, intense shocks. Are you sure? What do you think? So arrogant. The women exchanged glances, their eyes filled with murderous intent, and the one speaking even gritted her teeth. Turn it on for him. Is this it? It seemed hardly different from being kicked in the groin. As the device was activated, an intense pain surged through him. Fu Qian focused intently on the electric current's painful stimuli, doing his utmost to keep his expression natural. A few minutes later, the women staring at him wore big question marks on their faces, and couldn't help but check the device. Weird, is it broken? Sir, are you in pain? The lead director asked cautiously. Of course it hurts, can't you tell? Can't really tell. Your face looks like someone enjoying a warm bath, how could anyone tell? The director frowned. It still didn't feel enough. Fu Qian also frowned secretly. In terms of pain levels, it still fell short of the ordeal in the containment scenario. Is 10 the maximum level? Hearing Fu Qian's question unexpectedly, the director was a bit stunned. The device itself does have up to level 12, but... Let's go with level 12. Fu Qian didn't give her a chance to object. Way too arrogant. The director gritted his teeth and gave a signal with his eyes to someone beside him. Crank it up to level 12. But it's okay, the equipment might be broken, this is a good chance to test it. The director's face was expressionless. Ha. Ha. This is somewhat interesting. Moments later, Fu Qian took a couple of deep breaths, using all the strength in his body to maintain a Mona Lisa smile. Mr. Fu, are you alright? This weird expression sent shivers down the spine of several women. I'm fine, feeling absolutely fantastic. After much effort to turn Mona Lisa's killer smile into the Mona Lisa's smile, Fu Qian left the maternity clubhouse satisfied. A few minutes after his departure, the clubhouse erupted with screams like that of a slaughtering pig. Wearing a solemn expression, Fu Qian went back into the warehouse with his work badge once again. Would you like to spend 1 sandpoint to attempt containment again? Yes, you're awake? Accompanied by the familiar voice, agony flooded in like a tidal wave once more. Fu Qian controlled every muscle in his body, filling himself with benevolence, calmness, and purity. Yes, I'm feeling much better today, I think I don't need any treatment anymore. Is that so? The old man scrutinized Fu Qian carefully for a long while before finally murmuring. That's good. As he lifted his hand, a long syringe was withdrawn from the back of Fu Qian's hand. The moon is exceptionally warm tonight, go out and take a look. Perseverance pays off. It was finally worth the agony of the knots in his intestines. Fu Qian sighed inwardly, yet his face remained expressionless. Cautiously controlling his body to rise from the bed, Fu Qian coldly greeted the old man and headed in the direction he pointed. Only now did he see the full view of the room. The wooden room, at a glance, resembled some abandoned hospital clinic. Strictly speaking, the space wasn't too small, but the problem was that most of it was crammed with clutter, with all sorts of messy things lying around. Walking on it even produced creaking sounds. This ramshackle place looked as if a kick to the wall might allow one to gaze at the moon from inside the room. Despite his complaints, Fu Qian quickly reached the door and found that it was not only in poor condition but also nearly half blocked by clutter. Hurry up, the moon is about to set. Just as he thought to take a closer look outside, the old man's voice eerily came from behind. Is he threatening me? The floor had already been removed. If I don't go outside, are you going to chop me up? Fu Qian sniffed, and the next moment, out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of the old man standing up. A scythe, absurdly large in the man's hands, was shining with a cold light that hurt the eyes. Getting goosebumps, Fu Qian stepped out without any hesitation. Beautiful. Beautiful. A cobalt canvas of stars unfurled overhead, deep and boundless, centered around a large, peerless bright moon. The old man hadn't lied to him. Fu Qian had never seen such an exaggeratedly full moon, it felt as if it filled half the sky. Someone with a fear of large objects would probably have collapsed to the ground from this overwhelming sensation. Most importantly, as the snow-white moonlight shone upon him, Fu Qian felt the pain in his body rapidly dissipating. So this was the way to relieve pain. Praise the moon. Fu Qian took 2 steps forward, unable to resist the urge to strike a pose. SSHH. A sharp gust of wind assaulted him, accompanied by a spray of blood. Fu Qian felt a pain in his back as the scenery before him quickly faded away. In his final moments, Fu Qian exerted all his strength to turn his head, eager to see who had so dishonorably ambushed him. There was nothing. Containment failed. Survival time, 5 minutes. Evaluation, a glimpse into the dreamlike experience. Agony can refine one's sensibility. The moon has left you enchanted. Reward, inspiration +1. Inspiration increases your perceptual ability towards intangible things. Current sand points, 16. Chapter 3 The Useless Person 1 Great. At this rate, I'll soon become a mental patient with 0 sand points. Sand points -1. Enter containment scenario. Fu Qian didn't hesitate to choose to restart. The consecutive failures successfully sparked his interest. Are you awake? The old man's familiar voice came through. Once again gritting his teeth to persuade with reason, Fu Qian climbed out of bed and came to the door, squinting as he looked outside. There was something new in the courtyard: a human torso and limbs, an exaggeratedly long neck, and a head full of hair. At this moment, this odd creature, with 2 hollow eye sockets, gazed up at the starry sky, motionless. With such a demonic stance, could this be the legendary werewolf transformed under the full moon? The problem was that apart from its head, its body was completely bare. One could even vaguely make out human facial features. It seemed more like a bearded zombie. What was most eye-catching were the strips of tattered cloth on its body. Had this thing been a human before, and discovered the beauty of wildness to return to nature here? Fu Qian made an irresponsible guess. Considering its position, I must have walked right onto its face. No wonder I was sent flying with a slap. This monstrously large claw, probably bigger than my own head, must have been the weapon that finished me off. As for why it was invisible before, but now visible, Fu Qian felt he had guessed the reason. The issue was likely with that inspiration +1, it allowed me to see more things. The moon is about to set. The old man's urging voice came from behind again. This time, Fu Qian didn't turn back. He crept low, sticking to the blind spot in the werewolf's field of vision, and quietly walked out. The werewolf stayed in its place, continuing to gaze at the starry sky, showing no reaction to Fu Qian's actions. Quietly heaving a sigh of relief, Fu Qian carefully surveyed the surroundings and quickly found an exit: a stone double door. But the problem was that the door looked extremely heavy and was only a few meters away from the werewolf. Could this get any more annoying? You might as well just let it ride on top. Complaints aside, Fu Qian didn't allow anger to cloud his judgment. Instead, he seriously analyzed his current predicament. Regardless of the difficulty, one must analyze the situation calmly, confront it steadily, and ultimately, elegantly sever the boss's head. That is the romance of a man. And currently, it seemed I had 2 choices. 1. Play hide and seek here with the werewolf, betting that its eyes and nose and whatnot were all ineffectual, remain still if the enemy doesn't move, and just wait out the time until the end. After all, the condition to achieve containment was to survive 1 hour. 2. Face the risk of being clawed through the heart and open that door that seemed to weigh a ton, then run to the back where untold dangers might lurk. Fu Qian decisively decided to try the first option first. As everyone knows, if you want to survive long in the movies, the first rule is, if it's not necessary, do not be rash. Fu Qian noted the prompt in the upper left corner of his vision, indicating he had already successfully survived for 15 minutes this time. Being extremely cautious not to make a sound, Fu Qian slowly moved and finally, with his back to the werewolf, hid himself behind a tree. 16, 17, 20. At the 20th minute, the werewolf, which was gazing at the starry sky, suddenly howled and started to move. After abandoning its strange posture, the werewolf seemed exceedingly agitated. Moving with an incredible speed, it began to leap around the courtyard, almost instantly discovering Fu Qian behind the tree. Damn it! With no way to avoid it, Fu Qian was once again sent flying with a swipe. Containment failed. Survival time 20 minutes. Assessment: a useless person. The most foolish thing is to expect a madman to follow the rules. Reward: none. Current sand points: 15. So hiding doesn't work, huh? Fu Qian exhaled deeply, keenly aware of the malice in this place. No wonder they set a task to survive for an hour. It seems that the werewolf standardly starts freaking out after 20 minutes, so my plan to hunker down in the yard until the end is unworkable. If I retreat, there's still the god of death old man in the house. The only solution now, it seemed, was to open the stone door and run out. But not to mention how to avoid being detected first. Was this even something a human could push? Fu Qian, once again entering the containment scene, looked at the heavy stone door with a face full of grief and anger. Either way, he had to try. Fu Qian quietly picked up a stone from the ground and threw it toward the distance. The stone hadn't even hit the ground when a black flash darted by. The werewolf, which had been gazing up at the starry sky, sprang up at the sound of the wind. In an instant, it crossed several meters and swatted the stone away with a swipe of its paw. Before Fu Qian could swear, the werewolf in midair didn't hesitate to push off with its hind legs, change direction, and leap across half the field to crash into Fu Qian's arms. Fu Qian's plan to create a diversion instantly fell through. Containment failed. Survival time, 10 minutes. Rating, useless person. Current sand points, 14. What the hell is this precious thing? Again. Sand points decreased by 1, entering containment scene, to convince with reason, getting up, going out, hiding. Looking at the werewolf posing in the yard, Fu Qian began to seriously contemplate the issue of resigning. At this rate, there was absolutely no way out for humans. Surviving an hour was an impossible task. If he failed again, his sand points would be down to 13. He was getting closer to idiocy. It was clear that the werewolf had exceptionally keen hearing and would be alerted by any slight rustling. But if he didn't open the door, once the time was up and it stood up, he'd certainly be heading down a dead end. He glanced back at the cabin. The old man was eyeing him warily, scythe in hand gleaming brightly. An idea struck Fu Qian. What had he said to him earlier? To come out and look at the moon. But he had been looking at the moon for so long, and it seemed there was no change. Could it be that he was gazing at it the wrong way? Fu Qian had always been known for his exceptional divergent thinking since childhood, even earning the reputation of having a broad mind like that of a mental patient. Observing the werewolf in the yard, he had an idea. Finding a spot, Fu Qian stretched out his hand, lifted his head, and mimicked the werewolf's actions, gazing intensely at the moon. No response? Fu Qian was not one to give up easily. 1 minute, 2 minutes. Just as the werewolf began to shake its body, getting ready to walk around again, a change finally took place. The heavy-looking stone door silently opened from the outside. Who would have thought it could work like that? Although his guess had been confirmed, Fu Qian couldn't feel happy. This place was quite eerie. Who knew how many more things were waiting for him ahead? But with the way now open, Fu Qian quickly dropped his pose. Controlling himself to make no sound at all, he moved step by step to the position of the gate, avoiding the werewolf's line of sight. Here goes nothing. Darting out the door, his view suddenly brightened. Fu Qian finally understood why this place was called Full Moon Garden. Across the undulating landscape, countless small flowers with white petals and yellow buds swayed in the wind. Each petal, like a little mirror, reflected the bright moonlight, resembling a flowing stream of mercury. Luckily, at least for the moment, he hadn't discovered anything else. Fu Qian breathed a sigh of relief. The very next moment, he pulled that breath right back in. Chapter 4 Seeking Advice 1 Fu Qian had just caught his breath when he immediately realized something was wrong. It's so hot. His body felt like a candle in an oven, as if it could melt at any moment. No, it was already melting. In just a moment, every cell in his body had become restless, struggling to break free from its constraints. His muscles began uncontrollably wriggling, almost as if his body was about to fall apart. Fu Qian looked up at the flowers in front of him. The petals formed a silver river that seemed to have countless moons flowing in it. Countless bright flares reflected onto his body. Is there something wrong with the moonlight? Previously unnoticeable, but now these petals concentrated the moonlight, amplified who knows how many times, onto him, and the effect was evident. Fu Qian made a swift judgment. At this moment, things began to emerge on his arm. Those were a few twitching flesh buds, rapidly twisting and expanding. Is this the beginning of a mutation? Fu Qian was not intimidated by the scene before him, but grabbed one and yanked with all his might. Agony shot through him as the flesh bud was torn off. But quickly, more flesh buds appeared, and before long, his entire arm had transformed completely. It's hopeless. Fu Qian decisively gave up on clearing them and instead focused his mind on the ever-growing tentacles, finding he could even slightly control their wriggling. These things were rapidly burning through his life force. It wouldn't be long before he turned into a twisted mass of decayed flesh. He couldn't stay here. Fu Qian quickly scanned the area, but regrettably found no exit. He turned and ran back. However, even with such a quick response, before he could retreat into the stone door, both legs had completely melted and deformed, even starting to fuse with the ground. Making it back to the courtyard with difficulty, he could no longer maintain his balance and collapsed to the ground. This undoubtedly startled the werewolf inside the door. With a howl, a dark shadow unhesitatingly pounced on him. Containment failed. Survival time 25 minutes. He had thought that after transforming into a slime-like state, the werewolf might not be interested in him, but it seemed the creature was not picky at all. In the warehouse, Fu Qian remembered the scene of the werewolf feasting on him, the crisp sounds of chewing echoing in his ears. The situation is dire. The flowers in the garden are clearly abnormal, and given the speed of the mutation, there is simply no time to destroy them. Unable to destroy them, and with staying in Full Moon Garden out of the question, even if he slowed down every step of the way to the extreme, it would be impossible to last an hour. It's a dead end everywhere. What's the saying? All dead ends stem from insufficient strength. If I could knock down the old man with one kick and kill the werewolf with 2 punches, then I would surely find salvation in every desperate situation. Fu Qian was still not discouraged, rather, he patted his head to free up his thoughts. Setting aside whether it was possible or not, if he really had to pick one to fight off, who would it be? The old man seemed inscrutable in cunning and strength, while the werewolf seemed a bit easier, at least appearing to have average intelligence. So here comes the question. For a creature a size larger than his own, with overwhelming strength and speed, and exceptionally fast reflexes, what martial art could kill it? Fu Qian silently took off his work badge and returned to his home from the warehouse. He turned on the computer quickly. After thinking for a moment, Fu Qian made a search. How to fight a grown tiger with bare hands. He went through the search results one by one. Physical capabilities vary from person to person. In extreme anger. Fighting a tiger by oneself? That's easy. First, you have to be very strong. Don't panic. Don't turn your back to it. Stare into the tiger's eyes, and as it pounces, go for a sliding tackle. After a few tackles, you will have overwhelmed the tiger. Facing a screen full of chaotic advice, one entry caught his eye and gave him a glimmer of hope. Slide tackle. This idea quite interesting. Sand points decrease by 1, entering containment scenario. Fu Qian entered the Full Moon Garden for the 8th time. Still consisted of convincing through reason, getting up, exiting the house, and hiding. Fu Qian still opened the garden door. But this time, he didn't step through the door. Instead, he only stuck out both hands. The specks of light reflected by the petals instantly illuminated both hands, making them distinctly visible. Soon, tendrils of flesh bulged out. Excellent. Fu Qian retracted his arms and turned his head. Standing under the moonlight, the werewolf brother had already gotten up, staring straight this way, without making a sound. This damn oppressive feeling. Defeating this guy is the only possibility to complete the mission. Fu Qian looked at it coldly, not blinking. Not hesitating for long, the werewolf let out a piercing howl under the moonlight and leaped high, pouncing over it like a black bolt of lightning. Don't turn your back on it. Keep your eyes on its eyes. Fu Qian took a deep breath and instead of retreating, he advanced. He ran a couple of steps towards the werewolf and then laid down directly, sliding underneath the werewolf's belly. Secret move tie the secret technique slide tackle. Fu Qian pushed one grotesquely swollen arm, barely recognizable in shape, forcibly into the werewolf's mouth, past its white and sharply pointed teeth. Agony struck, and the werewolf almost immediately closed its sharp teeth, biting down so hard that Fu Qian felt his arm was nearly severed in two. That's right. Fu Qian wrapped his other arm tightly around the werewolf's neck, preventing himself from falling off. And in the werewolf's mouth, every single tendril on his arm madly grew according to his will. The tendrils extended through the werewolf's mouth and esophagus, Fu Qian controlling them to tear at everything they encountered, deeply entangling with the creature's organs. You trying to fuck with me? The next moment, Fu Qian used all his strength, grabbing everything he could and frantically pulling outwards. A horrifically brutal howl emerged from the werewolf's mouth. Under such excruciating pain, the werewolf turned completely wild, savagely destroying everything around it. However, Fu Qian, with his deformed arm, clung tightly to its chest and neck, right in the blind spot of its claw attacks. Eventually, when the entire courtyard was nearly ravaged into ruins, the werewolf finally collapsed. Struggling out from under the werewolf's body, Fu Qian silently tore off the remaining bit of flesh on his left hand. A slide tackle, and then choke it to death. The brother from Taiba sure had a good idea. After pondering, Fu Qian sat down on the ground with a thud, taking deep breaths. The feeling of cells rebelling was creeping up his arm bit by bit. Thankfully, it wasn't fast, and he should last for an hour. Unless that individual made a move. Fu Qian looked up and noticed that the old man from inside the house had somehow made his way into the courtyard. The old man had put away his scythe and was looking at him with a peculiar expression. After a long while, the man nodded his head. Not bad at all. Your way of fighting is quite impressive. Facing such a monster, what made you think of confronting and even killing it? It's good if he's just here to talk nonsense. As time slowly approached the 1-hour mark, Fu Qian finally breathed a sigh of relief. You really don't get it, do you? To a true gamer, as long as it has a health bar, even if it's a god, I'll kill it for you to see. Chapter 5, The rewards of not being human: 1. Survival duration of 1 hour achieved. Containment of subject number 3 2048 successful. Assessment: mad to the marrow, in a nightmare fraught with danger. Your savage and bloody performance suited the scenario all too well, earning you the right to survive. Congratulations on achieving the accomplishment. I'm no longer human. After all, from your behavior, your attachment to humanity doesn't seem strong. Werewolf killed. Reward: sand points plus 20, inspiration plus 5, skill, air bullet, special achievement reward, visceral critical strike. Would you like to replay the event recap? When Fukion returned to the warehouse, a series of messages was rapidly scrolling on the screen. What do they mean? My attachment to being human isn't strong. Fukion felt indignant about that assessment. He looked around and noticed that the mist gate he came through had disappeared. Finally, it's done. Only then did Fukion let out a sigh of relief. Can't deny it, though, this job is really intense. But the rewards aren't too shabby. After several trials and errors, his sand points had fallen to the teens, but with this boost of 20 points, he had compensated for the loss. Otherwise, with the rate he had been going, he probably would have gone mad in a few days. The assessment was another story. It was a bit nuanced, hard to say if it was meant as praise or criticism. There's also an event recap playback. Fukion didn't hesitate to choose the replay. Reliving the process, Fukion noticed even more details. When he saw himself under the moonlight, he understood why he was given the mad to the marrow assessment, as he watched himself extract the werewolf's internal organs and other messy bits with his transformed arms. Of course, understanding does not mean agreement. In fact, Fukion didn't think there was anything wrong with his actions at all. He believed that confronting a formidable enemy head-on, fearless and undeterred, using every method possible to smash the opponent beneath his feet, was a sort of manly romance. That was the beauty of blood, nothing to do with going mad. Additionally, he noticed that it was at this moment the old man in the house had put away his scythe, sizing him up as he left the room. Completely unconcerned about being affected by the fight, he certainly hadn't chosen the wrong opponent. This old man was likely much stronger than the werewolf. After watching the recap, Fukion started to tally up his gains. Air bullet: compress air to form an invisible bullet, not very powerful but excels in stealth. This is pretty cool. Fukion's eyes lit up as he rubbed his fingers together to test it out. An invisible bullet whizzed out instantly, shooting straight into the depths of the warehouse. Its range was decent, and it was activated quite swiftly. Even if it wasn't very powerful, its convenience was a plus. With just this one gain alone, most of Fukion's resentment had dissipated. Having this skill on hand for future missions would definitely be a great asset. If he remembered correctly, there was also a special reward. Fukion quickly found the other item. Visceral critical strike: seize the opportunity to penetrate the wound and directly damage the opponent's viscera, inflicting devastating damage, a cruel finishing move that elegantly relieves your prey of their burdens. This. Flashes of himself extracting the werewolf's entrails with his mutated tentacles crossed Fukion's mind. Awkward AMT. How could this reward not be related to his own actions? Could there be some sort of misunderstanding? He really wasn't that fond of scooping out innards. Never mind, having an extra skill is never a bad thing. Today's work is complete, thank you for your efforts, you may now leave the warehouse, see you tomorrow. The prompt sounded just in time. No need to wait to clock out, that's a plus. Fukion took off his work ID from around his neck. His vision went dark, and he found himself back in his long-missed home. Commuting sure is convenient. After musing for a moment, something occurred to Fukion. He picked up the phone on the desk and looked at it. Your account ending in 1269 has completed a transfer transaction of 30,000 yuan, with a remaining balance of 35,240. When Fukion found this message, he was still a bit startled. An annual salary of tens of millions, and it's settled daily. True industry conscience indeed. All the fatigue seemed to vanish in an instant. Right, it seemed he had forgotten something. Fukion slapped his forehead and quickly logged into the forum, finding that comment about sliding tackle killing a tiger. He first clicked like, then quietly replied below, tested, it works. That night, Fukion lay in bed reflecting on his new job. It must be said, today's experiences really challenged his imagination, overturning much of his prior knowledge. But even with many inexplicably strange things, Fukion still found enjoyment in it. Challenges, thinking, fighting, these seemed to him much more interesting than a 996 work schedule. Fukion was beginning to psychologically accept this job. After resting for a night, Fukion had a quick breakfast the next morning and put on his work ID again. Identity verification successful, workday starts. The moment the warehouse appeared before him, Fukion noticed something was amiss. The entire warehouse was flickering with black patterns, and clusters of ethereal bone spurs were floating midair, looking grotesque and eerie. I knew it. Fu Qian wasn't surprised in the slightest. It was becoming all too normal for something to happen in this warehouse each day. No need to ask, there had certainly been another leak. Warning, containment breach, code 2133, name, ritual notes, today's work content has been updated. Enter 2133's containment scene, complete recontainment, you may choose the skills you wish to carry, finally not going in empty-handed. Fu Qian decisively picked Air Bullet and Visceral Critical Strike from the list of skills, and selected Confirm. Entering 2133 containment scene, Ancient City, containment achievement condition, prevent the descent of the evil god's offspring, current sand points, 32, entering a containment scene will consume 1 sand point, is this about slaying gods? These missions are really getting more thrilling one after the other. Intuition told Fu Qian that today's work would be particularly tough. 1%, 5%, 50%, 98%, 100%, the ancient city has finished loading, an indescribable evil aura shrouds this once thriving place. Righteous night watchmen are doing their utmost to eradicate the omnipresent corruption. Sadly, they have yet to realize what they are about to face. Skills, Air Bullet, Visceral Critical Strike, Weapon, none, Night Watchman. Fu Qian was hearing this unfamiliar title for the first time, but even though he was unsure what exactly this group was, since they were described as righteous, he felt they might still be of some use. At this moment, Fu Qian's vision slowly came back, and then he saw a pair of eyes. The eyes were so close that they filled Fu Qian's entire field of vision. Amber pupils were motionless, staring straight at him. Fu Qian tried to move and found it hard to breathe, something was choking his neck. Can you hear me? The next moment, an ethereal, melodious voice sounded. Fu Qian frowned, quickly recalling experience from before use verbal communication more, physical gestures less. So even though he was nearly gasping for air, he still struggled to make a sound. Ka. N. The next moment, a bright flash of knife light passed by, and Fu Qian felt an icy chill in his chest, as blood gushed out. I'm sorry. The voice resounded once more, this time with a hint of sobbing. My sins have grown even deeper. Within a long sigh, Fu Qian's vision darkened. Chapter 6 Test 1 WTF. Having returned to the warehouse, Fu Qian was unusually taken aback for a moment. This is totally illogical. You ask questions, I respond, shouldn't we then exchange a few words back and forth? A simple apology and then you just send me off? Entering containment scene 2133, Old City, can you hear me speaking? Re-entering, this time Fu Qian chose not to respond and instead leaned back first. This time he finally got a clear look at the person who had sent him away, a woman wearing a black, narrow hat, carrying a slender curved sword in her hand. The lower half of her face was hidden by a high collar, and her full appearance couldn't be seen. From the part that was exposed, she should be a beauty, her skin white as snow, fine as porcelain. No, that was porcelain. The woman's face was distinctly different on both sides. The left half of her face had no skin but was made of a white substance similar to bone china. Fu Qian looked down at the hand that was grasping his collar, and it wasn't the shape of a normal human hand at all, but more like a doll's prosthetic limb. Night Watchman. That was the first thing that came to Fu Qian's mind. Not to mention anything else, just her appearance alone made it clear she was no ordinary person. But why would she want to kill him without a word? Remembering what had happened before, Fu Qian didn't rush to make a move. From that one move that had sent him away, Fu Qian had already sensed that the strength of this porcelain woman was even greater than the werewolf he had encountered earlier, at least a level higher. Although he had obtained 2 skills, his physical strength was still that of an average person. There was a difference between him and the weaponized human figure in front of him, who was armed to the teeth. It's not like he could slide tackle her as he did the werewolf, right? As long as this woman had normal intelligence, she probably wouldn't give him the chance to execute a slide tackle headshot. Seeing that Fu Qian was observing her, sadness appeared on the porcelain woman's face. She sighed, let go of Fu Qian's collar, and bowed lightly to him. I'm very sorry, there's no time left. I must clear all the contaminated ones within this area. So. I'm sorry. She was about to take action again. The porcelain woman bowed, and Fu Qian's eyelids twitched, knowing things were about to get bad. As expected, in the next moment, the bright gleam of the blade filled his view again, dazzling his eyes and causing them pain. Blood splattered. Realizing he absolutely couldn't dodge, Fu Qian resolutely controlled his body's instinct to evade and took the hit head-on. Allowing the shockingly deep wound to spurt blood wildly, Fu Qian showed no fear, instead offering a grim smile. Fu Qian? The porcelain woman looked puzzled. My name is Fu Qian, what about you? I think I should know whose hand I am dying by. Fu Qian looked calmly at his murderer. She wanted to know his name. The porcelain woman was taken aback again. Su Jiao. Great. Fu Qian nodded and could no longer hold on. Containment failed. Evaluation, useless person, reward, none, current sand points, 30. Back in the warehouse, Fu Qian had basically made some judgments about the current situation. First of all, this woman named Su Jiao was most likely a member of the Night Watchman. And according to the initial prompts, they were on a mission, which was to purge the pollution in this area. Her words and the fact that she chopped him down without saying anything were because they must have considered the situation out of control. They even had to start indiscriminate cleaning of people like him who were found in the contaminated area. Sand points reduced by 1, entering containment scene. Having cleared his thoughts, Fu Qian chose to enter again. Can you hear what I'm saying, Su Jiao? Fu Qian didn't wait to see clearly this time and directly called out the name of the porcelain woman. Don't waste time, we need to clean up all potential contaminants as soon as possible. The porcelain woman's hand, which was on the knife, froze there. One could almost imagine her confusion as Fu Qian glanced at her. There's no time to explain, I need you to cooperate with my actions from now on. How do you know my name? After hesitating for a long time, Su Jiao finally put down the knife and voiced the question in her heart. What's the situation like outside now? Fu Qian, as if he hadn't heard her, casually asked in return. Answering a question with another question, Fu Qian, who had mingled on the internet for many years, was very skilled at this maneuver. It was then that he realized the woman named Su Jiao was almost as tall as he was. Not too good. Indeed, the porcelain woman's attention was diverted, her tone immediately turning somber. You'll know if you go outside and see for yourself. Good. Fu Qian took 2 steps forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. Clang. The next moment, he silently fired an air bullet. At such a close distance, it was nearly impossible for the porcelain woman to avoid it. One side of her face was hit squarely, emitting a sound like shattering glass. Su Jiao's voice was a mixture of shock and anger. The power of the air bullet was a bit stronger than expected, though it might also be related to her special form. Struck by the air bullet, one half of the porcelain woman's head was like tempered glass that had shattered, instantly covered in dense cracks, yet no blood came out. This woman really is abnormal. The next moment, the bright glint of a blade reappeared, and Fu Qian was drenched in his own blood on the spot. So you've truly gone completely mad at your core, haven't you? The porcelain woman's sigh lingered for a long time. Containment failed. Evaluation, cold-blooded animal, stealth attacks are a valuable trait, the ultimate form of respect toward an enemy, reward, none, special evaluation reward, cat school, current sand points, 29, excellent. Back at the warehouse, Fu Qian showed no signs of dejection, silently analyzing his gains. First, his judgment was correct, this woman was not normal. For reasons unknown, parts of her body had transformed into that porcelain quality, even to the extent of not bleeding when injured. What price is she paying for the power she wields? Or had she originally been an enchanted doll? Combining this with his current objective, to prevent the descent of the offspring of the evil god. This world really is full of oddities. The good news is, as a night watchman, this woman should be considered part of the forces of order and righteousness. Her strength is formidable, she's a reliable enforcer. And the fact that he could indeed injure beings of their level with strikes like the one he just dealt is also good news. Overall, the outcome of this encounter was worth it. As for what would happen if the porcelain woman was actually killed? Those who kill will be killed in turn. This woman had attempted to clean up Fu Qian more than once now, so he felt no psychological burden at the prospect of ending her. Right, it seemed there was also a skill reward? Recalling something, Fu Qian quickly reviewed his special rewards. Cat school, your steps are as light and unnoticeable as a cat's, your hands are more dexterous, your movements more agile, making it much easier for you to launch stealth attacks anytime, anywhere. Simply put, it's an enhancement to agility. Upon attempting immediate activation, Fu King felt a lightness come over him, as if his control over his body had improved significantly. This cut was truly not endured in vain. Chapter 7 Bluffing 1, Sand Points decreased by 1, entering containment scenario, Fu Qian reached out and touched the mist gate, which had appeared in the warehouse once again. This time, Fu Qian didn't play any tricks, and honestly followed the porcelain white Su Jiao outside. As they walked out of the building, Fu Qian realized what Su Jiao's unease actually meant. It seemed like it should have been a bustling street, but unfortunately, there was not a soul in sight. The most striking thing was above them. The originally blue sky was now completely covered by a turtle shell-like mysterious pattern, as if a giant umbrella had been put up. Has the true evil god descended? In light of this situation, it was understandable why Su Jiao and the others were so tense. As for why there was not a single person on the street, Fu Qian thought he had already guessed the answer. Have all the people been evacuated? Fu Qian turned and asked. Only the part that could be evacuated, Su Jiao replied in a low tone. We received orders to investigate, but unfortunately, we arrived too late. In this area close to the source of pollution, the mutations have begun, and the cursed citizens are starting to transform into a deformed state. Considering the risk, my teammates and I are in the process of cleaning up. Your decision is not wrong, I would do the same. Fu Qian didn't blame them, but expressed his agreement. The situation was quite clear now. Ms. Su Jiao and her teammates received orders to investigate and found a severe pollution curse here. After evacuating the outer crowd, they had no choice but to clean up the citizens who could not be saved. This could also explain his previous encounter when he was attacked without so much as a word. No wonder this woman had the expression of being toyed with, she had clearly become emotionally overwhelmed. They now defined the incident as a severe pollution curse, but probably still didn't know about the godson of the evil god. This was what was meant by they still don't know what they are dealing with at the beginning of the introduction. The good news was that, from what he could see, this beautiful woman and her teammates had roughly the same goal as him. But earning their trust was not going to be easy. Actually, I am the same. Before Su Jiao could say anything else, Fu Qian hummed and looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. I have also been contaminated. Upon hearing this, a glint of cold light flashed in Su Jiao's eyes. But in the end, the hand holding the knife did not move. Fu Qian seemed unaware of her action. I inadvertently discovered something unusual here and came to investigate, but the curse was unstoppable. I am now barely suppressing it from taking effect, but I won't last long. I will tell you when it's time for you to use your knife. But before that, I need to fulfill my responsibility. To get these people to listen to his arrangements, pretending to be a transcendent was very necessary. But they were all professionals, and the strength he exuded could not fool them. That's when he needed an excuse for not being in top condition. While Fu Qian was bluffing, he quickly saw several people running over from different directions. Leading them was a middle-aged man in his 40s, tall, with sharp eyes flashing on his lean, dark face. What's going on? At the sight of Fu Qian, the middle-aged man furrowed his brow and couldn't help but question Su Jiao. There is no room for mercy in this operation. Otherwise, it might result in the deaths of thousands or even millions of people. Captain. Su Jiao nodded in salute to him and pointed at Fu Qian by her side. We found him over there. He claims he came to investigate the anomalies as well. He came to investigate. The middle-aged man looked at Fu Qian with a mix of shock and suspicion. Correct. Fu Qian's expression was more natural than nature itself. Su Jiao has already told me, the situation is worse than we imagined, we had better hurry up. What are you? There are 4 official night watchmen here, and by the look of your power, you're just an ordinary person. What gives you the right to bark orders? However, before the captain could even speak, a buzz-cut man from behind him had already rushed forward to take the lead. Fu Qian glanced at him, noting that this man appeared much younger and was incredibly burly. His hair stood up spike by spike, and in the not-so-warm weather, he wore only a short-sleeved shirt. At the moment, like everyone else, he was covered in splattered blood, and his expression was fierce and vicious. It was obvious that he was in a killing frenzy, likely to lash out at the slightest provocation. There's no time to delay, let's discuss as we move. Nonetheless, Fu Qian ignored him, still addressing the captain. Captain, this man's state is suspicious, and it's highly likely he has been contaminated. I believe he should be dealt with immediately. The buzz-cut man, being ignored, had his eyes turned blood red, ready to eliminate Fu Qian on the spot. Indeed, I have been cursed, Fu Qian responded, startling the few of them. You don't feel it because I am barely holding back the curse from acting out, at the cost of having almost no combat strength. Behold. Fu Qian gently lifted his hand, and an air bullet shot out from his fingertip, striking a street lamp nearby. I can only offer a negligible amount of help. He was actually a transcendent. The captain and others, including Su Jiao, were taken aback. Regardless, such an ability was definitely not something an ordinary person could perform. The captain's gaze drifted to Su Jiao, hoping she could provide more information. However, Su Jiao was visibly in a bad mood, just standing like a puppet on the spot, oblivious to the captain's hopeful gaze. In the end, the captain hesitated for a moment before stopping the buzz-cut man who was itching for action. Since we all share the same goal, that's good news. May I ask your name? Lucky break. Upon being asked this, Fu Qian knew things were settled. Just call me Fu Qian, he replied, while maintaining an inscrutable expression. Since you've been investigating here beforehand, do you know the source of the contamination? One of the middle-aged members of the team, an old man who had been silent until now, suddenly asked. It's not easy, still on field duty with hair that's gone all white. Fu Qian glanced at the older night watchman, who seemed more worn out than the others. Good question. Fu Qian exhaled. That's why I'm saying we don't have much time. We must prevent that thing from descending as soon as possible. Descending? That thing? The few of them were startled yet again. Indeed, Fu Qian affirmed with sincerity. The source of the contamination originates from an evil presence of extremely high stature. What you see now is just a minute fraction of its leaked power. I can tell you with responsibility that should that thing truly descend, the consequences are unimaginable. Like having to restart my mission all over again. Fu Qian added silently to himself. After he finished speaking, the night watchmen looked at each other in dismay. Following a moment of silence, the captain coughed. Then I won't keep secrets either. We are the night watchman squad of this district. Not long ago, we received a report of abnormal occurrences here, along with a large-scale casualty event. Upon arrival, we realized the situation was far from simple. After urgently evacuating the crowds, we had to make some necessary arrangements. I completely understand. I would have done the same, Fu Qian interrupted him, indicating that the captain shouldn't feel any psychological burden. I am well aware of the horror of this curse. After fulfilling my responsibilities, I'll need your help to release me from it. What a brave soul. Even the captain was somewhat moved, finding Fu Qian's figure more imposing than ever before. Chapter 8 Notes 1 This stuff is getting thicker by the minute, we really shouldn't waste any time. Fu Qian pointed upwards with his hand. It was a welcome surprise to successfully recruit 4 enforcers so smoothly. Without further delay, his priority was to lead the team to the side of the godson for delivery. And he wasn't just talking nonsense. Just a few minutes after exiting the house, the shadows overhead had become even denser, significantly reducing visibility. Even the wind felt unpleasantly thick, as if it was laced with invisible needles that numbed the skin. The perimeter should be almost clear by now. The team leader nodded and gave firm orders. Considering Fu Qian's poor condition, he specifically instructed the porcelain-skinned Sujao to watch over him closely. As for whether it was to protect or to monitor him, that was hard to say. Fu Qian had no objections. After all, with his mysterious origins, it was impossible to dispel their wariness with just a few words. Not to mention that at the moment, they were all in a bloodthirsty frenzy. Soon, the group made their way through the long street, heading towards the center of the shadows. The atmosphere along the way was incredibly tense, and everyone remained silent. Indeed, aside from the naturally twisted, there were few who could maintain a good mood after slaughtering their own kind even if there were valid reasons. The area was an older residential district, with crowded buildings limiting visibility. Every member of the team proceeded with care, weapons at the ready, while Fu Qian, walking in the middle of the group, was the most relaxed of all. As they neared the central area, Fu Qian suddenly became alert. A window on the brink swung open, and a gray blur whistled out, shooting straight for his face. The blade from Su Jiao and Fu Qian's air bullet hit it almost simultaneously. Pop. The thing stumbled from the impact, then was swiftly sliced in two by Su Jiao. Even so, it still managed to leave a deep gash on Fu Qian's shoulder. And half its body crawled on the ground for several meters before stopping. Habituated to pain through rigorous training, Fu Qian paid little mind to the minor wound and immediately retreated to a safe distance. Only then did he get a clear look at what had attacked him. Black hair, a coat covered in grime. It must have been a person not long ago. Unfortunately, it was now completely deformed. Its body seemed as if it had been stretched tenfold before snapping back into place, with most of its legs retracted into its torso, only the lower part visible. This is the first time I've seen such a curse. The crew-cut man took a deep breath, his tone relaxing ever so slightly. Fu Qian noticed that including the team leader, everyone else showed similar reactions. They had hypothesized that the curse contamination would turn people into monsters, and now that it was confirmed, the guilt in their hearts lessened a bit. How's your wound? The team leader turned back to look at Fu Qian. It's nothing, let's keep going. Fu Qian acted as though he barely felt the wound on his shoulder, determined to maintain his tough image to the end. The team leader nodded silently. He had observed Fu Qian's reaction to the attack. Now he was even more convinced that Fu Qian was a transcendent who was accustomed to life and death. Only such a person could have that kind of insight and courage. Impressed, the team leader resolved to find a way to lift Fu Qian's curse after resolving the incident. Damn it, why are there so many? At that moment, they heard the crew-cut man curse in a low growl. In just a short while, maggot people emerging from windows, rooftops, and even the pipes overhead crowded in toward the group of 5. Move. The team leader ordered decisively. The group started moving quickly, aiming to carve out a path before being surrounded completely. Fu Qian, for his part, was quite cheerful, rewarding anyone who attacked with an air bullet without exception. If he remembered correctly, the summary included a count of enemies killed, which might affect rewards or something. Collecting data was always right. It was also a good opportunity to practice and improve his proficiency. Very quickly, his air bullets reached a level where every shot was a headshot. With the cat school's bonuses, he could hit whatever he aimed at. By the time the 5 of them turned the corner of the long street, the scene before them opened up. In a spacious hall, nearly 100 figures wrapped in human clothing were stooped over on the ground. Densely packed, they covered every field. Among them were no shortage of immaculately dressed individuals. Bodies even swayed gently to some kind of rhythm. Damn. Even Fu Qian, who prided himself on being well-informed, felt nauseous at this sight. The captain's face had turned as black as charcoal. Clearly he hadn't anticipated the situation to be this grave. All right, that's enough. But before he could speak, the always silent old man piped up. Seeing everyone looking at him, the old man harumphed before continuing. I believe this incident has exceeded our jurisdiction. We should report it to the authorities and let them send someone. I think you've just chickened out. The buzzcut man was the first to explode. Report for handling? Don't tell me you don't know how long it'll take for them to get here. That's right, I've chickened out, admitted the old man, not the least bit ashamed. I'm different from you, I only do what's within my responsibilities. The things we've done so far, we can still somehow explain. Now, with this scenario, what do you want to do? With so many people, if we really turn this place into a living hell, are you really confident we won't be dealt with? If we all fall here, that's when the situation will truly spiral out of control. We don't even know what caused the contamination curse. It's all been said by this fellow with an unclear background. Are you really trusting his words that much? Why is this coming back on me? Seeing the old man pointing at him, Fu Qian calmly shook his head. There's no need to trust everything I've said. What I've said isn't entirely true anyway. We can't just walk away like this. We won't be able to explain ourselves if we go back, said the captain with a cold face. Who says we've found nothing? The old man pulled out something and tossed it over. At least we found this. Fu Qian glanced at it. A ragged black notebook. Where did you find this? The captain looked startled. During the cleanup, the old man harumphed, pointing at Fu Qian. I just didn't trust him, so I didn't show it until now. With this thing, we can't be considered to have come away empty-handed, right? Seeing the remaining 3 people fall into silence, seemingly persuaded, Fu Qian felt uneasy. That's not right, this feels like disbanding the team before we've even seen the boss. Fu Qian pointed at the object in the captain's hand. May I take a look at it? This is an important item. Before the captain could respond, the buzzcut man got angry first. However, the captain ignored him and handed over the notebook. There's no harm in letting you see it. This item is connected to another incident we've been investigating. I've looked through it before, there's nothing unusual. The notebook was thin, with not much content. Fu Qian flipped through it with his fingertips, frowning. I can't understand this part below. What does it mean? What? Following where Fu Qian was pointing, everyone looked incredulous. You're not joking? Why would I joke? This section here is all messed up, it's completely unreadable. The captain silently handed over a stick. Can you copy it down? Fu Qian, why? Because to us, that section appears blank. Chapter 9, Exhausting Every Effort. 1. Indeed, it was so. From the reactions of the crowd a moment before, Fu Qian had felt something amiss, and now he finally confirmed the reason. None of the 4 could see this part of the text, it was only visible to him. Fu Qian didn't put much stock in explanations like being a chosen one. After some thought, the only explanation would have to do with the inspiration he had gained previously. Especially since he gained quite a bit of inspiration after the last successful containment. Inspiration was said to enhance one's perception of intangible things. It must be the reason he could see the special content in the notes. Fu Qian didn't waste words. Amidst the complex looks from the others, he quickly sketched the content he saw on the ground. For him, completing the mission against the clock was the most important thing. He couldn't afford to miss any clues. The passage wasn't long, and Fu Qian finished drawing it quickly. The group stared at what he had drawn, all of them exchanging confused glances. What is this? Cuneiform script? Seems like some kind of code? No clue whatsoever. The captain was clearly just as baffled. Sujiao, what do you think? Unexpectedly, this girl turned out to be the tech expert of the team. Fu Qian glanced at the porcelain-skinned woman. It should be a type of special cipher. Sujiao pondered for a moment before giving her judgment. I have a few ideas about the direction to take, but deciphering it won't be easy. It requires ample time, which we absolutely don't have under the current circumstances. Isn't that completely pointless then? Just a waste of time. A wave of disappointment swept through the group. Let me give it a try. Fu Qian suddenly spoke up. You understand it? Everyone turned to look at Fu Qian in unison. I don't, but I can learn. Fu Qian said it as if it were the most natural thing in the world and turned to Su Jiao. Tell me your guesses first. This. Su Jiao wasn't completely stunned and murmured a few ideas. Learn my ass. It was then that the crew cut man couldn't hold back his anger and burst out yelling. He had found Fu Qian annoying for a long time now. Never mind the unexplained origins, yet making everyone listen to him. To slow the spread of the curse, they had turned into butchers, willing to slaughter their own kind. And this guy still had the mood to fool around here. Rage-fueled power gathered in his palms, the crew cut man was now genuinely intent on killing. However, before he could step forward, a sharp sense of danger rose in his heart. Suddenly turning around, an air bullet grazed past his neck. At the same time, blood splattered as another air bullet obliterated his left eye. Everyone stood frozen on the spot. This bastard had attacked without warning, evidently with the intent to kill. They'd been deceived, this guy really was trouble. Without concerning himself with what the others were thinking, Fu Qian didn't hesitate to target the captain after attacking the crew cut man, firing 3 air bullets in rapid succession. With such a short distance between them, the captain had no chance to avoid them. The next moment, a shrill scream echoed, and a vibrant burst of electricity exploded from the captain's body, its brightness almost instantly blinding. This blast of electricity hit Fu Qian squarely. Fu Qian felt as if his body had instantly become liquid. Containment failed, so powerful. He was indeed carrying a heavy weapon on him. Back in the warehouse, Fu Qian didn't hesitate to take off his work badge from around his neck. Just because Su Jiao didn't have the time didn't mean he didn't. From the moment he asked her, he was determined to restart. So, when the crew cut man wanted to act, he didn't hold back either. As for attacking the captain, it was simply common sense. In such a dangerous situation, the captain still hesitated to order a retreat. Fu Qian intuitively felt he must be relying on something. Those 3 bullets were just a handy test. Now it appeared that he hadn't been wrong in his judgment. The captain did indeed have some kind of super weapon on him that had instantly killed him with a flash of lightning. This was definitely good news, as it would surely come in handy when facing the boss later. Fu Qian would never underestimate anything worthy of being called a descendant of the evil god. When he got home, he immediately found some paper and a pen. After a long period of contemplation with his eyes closed, he began to write, drawing out the content he had just jotted down in his notebook again. Memorizing these meaningless characters by rote was incredibly difficult, especially ensuring that there were no errors or omissions. By the time he had written everything down, even Fu Qian, who ordinarily boasted of his exceptional memory, felt as though he was about to have a cerebral hemorrhage. Finally, he knew how Huang Yeyashi's wife had died. As he sighed, Fu Qian began the arduous task of decryption. Thanks to his wide range of hobbies, he was half an enthusiast in this field on a regular basis. But he wasn't a professional, and without Su Jiao's hints, decoding this would have been akin to finding a needle in a haystack. Now that he had a direction, the workload had greatly diminished. Even so, by the time he made any headway, several hours had passed. Amidst the groveling multitude of followers, descending into the depths beneath the earth. A good while later, as Fu Qian looked at what he held in his hand, he put his work badge back on. Entering containment scene, current sand points, 27. The scene we're faced with now has exceeded our understanding, he said. Let's stop here this time. When the group came to the hall, Fu Qian didn't even give the old man a chance to pull out his notes. He cut off the argument and looked seriously at the captain. Is there some deep space around here? He asked. Deep space? The captain frowned, not understanding Fu Qian's intention. Amidst the multitude of followers, it descends into the depths beneath the earth. Fu Qian pointed forward, confident in his theory. This is part of a ritual. The 2 sentences I just recited are key steps in that ritual. An evil presence will descend into the depths of the earth. We need to find it as soon as possible. In truth, Fu Qian wasn't certain those 2 sentences meant exactly that, but in order to get the others to follow his arrangements, he had to maintain a professional image. I'm not familiar enough with this place, so I need to confirm with you if there's such a place here. He asked. This. Everyone exchanged glances. Yes, said Su Jiao, who until then had been silent. She pointed downwards with her hand. Beneath this building by several dozen meters lies a high-security underground vault. Lots of people store their valuables in there. You know that too. Fu Qian silently praised her. Such places are generally not cheap, sister, you seem to be quite wealthy. Do you know how to get down there? He asked. I do. Su Jiao was indeed a hero among women, she answered and instantly drew her sword with a swoosh. In the next instant, a flash of the blade split the crowd of maggot people, cleaving a path through them. Su Jiao took the lead, striding forward. Of course, her fierce and peerless slash had inevitably disturbed the maggot people swarming all around. Amidst the shrill buzzing that made one's teeth ache, the maggot people began to turn in their direction, moving towards them with a firm yet slow convergence. Luckily, they were indeed slow enough. By the time the group led by Su Jiao had opened a descending escalator, the entrance was already surrounded by a dense mass of twisted bodies. As the escalator door closed, Fu Qian noticed the old man quietly sighing. The steadfast brother must be hating himself right now, which was completely understandable. To be honest, he would have liked it if the group had just gone berserk and started an unstoppable rampage above, potentially racking up a considerable number of kills in the process. But doing such a thing would inevitably have taken up a lot of time and might have delayed the completion of the mission. Moreover, these four people clearly hadn't gone truly mad yet. The passage downwards was nearly pitch black, and after an indeterminable amount of time, they finally saw some light ahead. Suddenly, an intense smell hit them. Get ready. Without needing the captain to give orders, everyone switched to combat readiness. It seemed they had found the right place. Fu Qian followed behind Su Jiao and sidestepped through a massive metal door inside. The scene was something of a restricted nature. Chapter 10, Restricted Scene 1. In the spacious hall, clothes were scattered all over the floor. Their owners had vanished. Only a group of pale, worm-like creatures remained, entangled like a knot of snakes, caressing each other. In the midst of the serpent ring, a woman, appearing to be a distinguished lady, was dressed in a deep red gown, elegantly bringing a teacup to her lips. Although the teacup was only half full, the lady still elegantly bit off a piece, chewing without showing her teeth, making a crunching sound. She seemed utterly indifferent to the bloody holes punctured in her cheeks. Oh, the evil deeds I've done in my life, to witness such a scene. Fu Qian sighed silently and turned to look at his four teammates. Judging by their expressions, they were also deeply shocked. Action. The team leader, true to his title, was almost the first among them to recover his composure. Glancing at the lady's swollen belly, he immediately issued the attack command. There's no way around it, her appearance practically screams boss. In this situation, no one would believe she was an innocent bystander. The four-person squad showed excellent teamwork. At the captain's command, the crew-cut man was almost the first to rush forward. The old man seemed reluctant, but he followed closely behind. The crew-cut man, now wearing a pair of oddly shaped gloves, threw a punch that faintly echoed with the sound of thunder. The old man had no weapon in hand, but a casual gesture from him exploded in a burst of flames. Under their swift attack, the lady didn't even have a chance to dodge. She was instantly overwhelmed. At this moment, the seemingly strongest team leader did not charge forward but stood still, taking something out of his bosom, targeting the lady from a distance. Su Jiao, the woman with the porcelain face, unsheathed her blade, guarding by his side, preventing the distressed snakes from attacking him. This was a big move, decisive and resolute. Fu Qian knew what the team leader was planning. Having moved to the side earlier, he finally got a clear view of what the team leader's ultimate weapon was. Indeed, it was something hard to describe as a weapon, about the length of a forearm with a fist-sized globe at the end, attached to a long and slender handle. The curious shape, coupled with the countless currents of electricity swirling around it at the moment, almost made it seem like something broken off from a magnetic storm coil. This was the thing that had taken him down earlier, the captain's ultimate weapon. The captain was clearly catalyzing its power for some big strike. In just a few seconds, the accumulated force had far surpassed what had hit him before, the white-hot lightning making it almost unbearable to look at. Compared to this horrifying power, what had hit him before was nothing but a spark of electricity. However, just then, there was a complication on the side of the crew-cut man and the old man. A sharp cry rang out, and Fu Qian felt his head shake even from a distance, his nose almost bleeding. Accompanied by a spray of blood, the crew-cut man was sent flying, crashing heavily against the wall. Before he could adjust his posture, a blood-drenched figure had already rushed towards him, impaling him to the wall with a sharp bone blade as if skewering lamb. Damn. The once gracefully poised lady still kept her grace. One leg had lost all flesh, but it didn't affect her from confidently standing there. Four bone claws of different shapes pierced through the back of her gown, one of which had impaled the crew-cut man. The moment this image entered his sight, Fu Qian felt his head hammered, his consciousness blurring. Sand points deducted by 5, huh? Fu Qian was somewhat startled. Just catching a glimpse of this creature, and directly 5 sand points were lost. That's like 5 lives. The risk of this mission is too high. After a fatal strike, the lady did not linger, She pulled out the bone blade and flashed to the side, slicing the old man who had just gotten up and the floor beneath him in two. The movements in the blink of an eye were so swift her figure seemed weightless. A sudden explosive rebuke came from the side, and by then, the captain had finally completed the guidance. A straight column of electricity, composed of innumerable bolts, instantly engulfed both the noblewoman and the old man's corpse on the ground. Lightning railgun. Watching the endless stream of lightning beams, Fu Qian finally understood the true power of the captain's ultimate weapon. However, under this world-shattering attack, countless black threads rapidly wove into a cocoon in front of the noblewoman, blocking the lightning beams for a sliver of time. Thanks to this slight impediment, the noblewoman's ghostly figure escaped the range of the lightning bolts. With a single flash, she was directly in front of the captain. A much sharper wailing sound arose again, causing the captain's body to tremble. Blood flowed from both his nose and mouth, and he stiffened on the spot. Under the attack of the lightning railgun, one of the 4 bone blades had already vaporized and vanished. But the remaining 3 simultaneously penetrated the captain's body, lifting him into the air. The captain's ultimate weapon was powerful indeed, but it was to no avail since the opponent had maxed out her evasion. The baby's cries grew louder. Fu Qian, watching the noblewoman who was no longer in human form, fired a succession of air bullets. The transformed noblewoman didn't even dodge. After a series of crisp sounds of bones clicking, her body didn't bear a single mark. Indeed, his own means of attack could almost never break through her defenses. Evil God's offspring has arrived. Containment failed. At that moment, an alert sounded in his ear and a scene before his eyes quickly blurred. The last thing Fu Qian saw was Sujiao leaping up high and throwing a blade of light at the noblewoman. Phew. Back in the storeroom, Fu Qian took a deep breath and vaguely felt his head was still aching. He hadn't expected to fail like this. Strictly speaking, there wasn't much of a problem with the squad's tactical arrangement just now. Straight to the point without any fuss, some team members distracted, providing opportunity for the strongest weapon to strike. It seemed logical enough. One could only say that the attempted distraction by the 2 crew cutmen had unexpectedly alerted the evil god's offspring, and then its mother was overwhelmingly powerful. After transforming, the woman's speed was too fast, plus that strange shield, resulted in the captain's ultimate weapon completely missing its intended target. Decisiveness mistaken for rush. Would you like to spend 1 sand point to attempt containment again? After summarizing the situation, Fu Qian decisively pressed his hand to the mist gate that had appeared. Yes, he already had a new idea. Once again, he returned to the grand hall that broadened his horizons. Prepare for action. Hold on. This time, just as the captain was about to give orders, Fu Qian directly stopped him. If you want the thing in your arms to be of any use, it's best not to startle her. And these 2 should stay put as well. What right do you have to give orders? The 2 crew cutmen immediately became furious. How could he possibly know? The captain was taken aback when his greatest secret was so unexpectedly revealed, and he held back his subordinates with his hand. Putting aside how the other man knew, Fu Qian's performance all along had convinced him that this young man would not act without aim. Seeing the captain's cooperative response, Fu Qian satisfactorily nodded at him. Carefully avoiding the stripy objects and unidentified liquids on the floor, he sat down opposite the noblewoman. Hello there, beautiful. Chapter 11, The Vitality of the Evil God 1. Hello there, young man. Facing Fu Qian's sudden flirtation, the elegant lady was clearly taken aback before letting out a tittering laugh. Her eyes had a strange haziness to them, resembling a creeping beast. Since the moment the 5 of them entered, they had been under the watch of such predator-like gaze. Accompanied by the gurgling of bloody saliva in her mouth, Fu Qian had no doubt she could pounce at any moment to take a bite out of someone. Fortunately, after responding to Fu Qian, her eyes became slightly clearer, as if she remembered her human identity. Still able to hold a conversation, there's a chance. Apparently, she hadn't completely lost her sanity. Fu Qian judged correctly and, growing more interested, decided to continue with his plan to draw attention. Madam, you're so beautiful. Interested in some intimate contact? Worried that boring flirtatious words wouldn't catch her attention, he went straight to the point. Hee hee. The beautiful woman covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes slowly rolling as she let out a series of delicate laughs. Your question is quite rude, but it's lively and you look quite delectable. But are you sure you will still like it like this? The lady leaned back slightly, exposing her swollen belly, gently caressing it with one hand, her gaze soft. No problem, I like children. Fu Qian's expression remained unchanged. Really? That's wonderful. The beautiful woman's smile grew increasingly syrupy. I like them too. Especially young children. Is this guy refusing to let us take action and going off to flirt instead? With some evil entity spouting from his mouth? The 4 people in the distance were stunned, Their sanity and dignity were being violently assailed by what they saw. In this short while, the drips of blood that had fallen on the lady's face had reddened a patch on her chest. Amidst the contrast of red and white, she appeared even more seductively demonic. However, Fu Qian remained oblivious to this, his eyes brimming with affection and his language vulgar and distasteful. This child mustn't be allowed to remain. Witnessing this scene, the crew-cut man couldn't help murmuring to himself, feeling his Kylan arm getting restless. At such a young age, he was already this perverted. Given time, he'd surely become a scourge. This guy obviously came prepared, holding much information we are unaware of. By contrast, the captain was a bit more mature, understanding that Fu Qian was buying time for them, although he couldn't help but feel agitated. However agitated he was, the captain still promptly pulled out his ultimate weapon. "Cover me," he whispered a shout, aiming at the target and began to gather power. With Fu Qian's distraction present, locking on the target couldn't have been easier. The lady was even led to turn her back towards them. If they couldn't handle this, might as well just bash their head in and be done with it. As streaks of lightning frantically converged and flickered, the captain became increasingly tense as well. Finally, under the protection of his three comrades, the electricity in the captain's hand swelled to its limit. The next moment, an endless surge of lightning completely enveloped the lady. Just across the table, Fu Qian felt like he was going blind from that instant flash. The lady's body, like straw in a tempest, crumbled without a doubt upon contact. From skin to bone, turned to ash and annihilated. And from where her belly was, a shadowy figure began to struggle fiercely. Barriers appeared and burst instantaneously, and finally, the shadow silently exploded into a cloud of black mist, slowly dissipating. Is she dead? The resplendent lightning railgun ceased its fury. All four night watchmen let out a sigh of relief. The captain had already reached his limit, nearly collapsing to the ground. It was evident that controlling this thing took a considerable toll on his strength. Check the surroundings. Barely standing up, the captain had only spoken half his words when a hand pierced through his chest. Everyone froze on the spot, watching in disbelief as the old man stood behind the captain with a strange smile. The next moment, the withered hand revealed bone blades that completely extinguished the captain's life force. The godson's descent, containment failure, this thing doesn't even die? Upon returning to the warehouse, Fu Qian acutely realized the difficulty of contending with an evil god. After the lady had been annihilated, he had not received the mission completion prompt, which had made him suspicious then. Unfortunately, the old man was too quick. Looking at it now, could it be that even if the host body for the descent was destroyed, the entity could still possess and take over another's body to complete its descent? Impossible. If it truly were immortal and could simply possess anyone, this entity could have just slaughtered everyone one by one. Why, then, would it have such a strong reaction to the lightning railgun? But the old man was indeed possessed. Was there something different about him? The ritual notebook. Fu Qian's eyes lit up. He thought of something. He remembered the old man saying he found the notebook nearby, and the ritual cipher also came from it. In a sense, it was too normal for the notebook to be connected with the brother who wanted to descend. Considering that the old man always kept it close, completing the embodiment through it was indeed possible. But if that were the case, the situation became even more complex. Sand points decreased by 1, entering containment scene. Fu Qian, with a frown, chose to enter once again. Still in his avatar of an expert, he guided everyone underground, then moved to flirt with the girls, creating an opportunity for the captain to unleash his power. Only this time, after the captain had initiated the attack, Fu Qian did not stay to watch the evil god's obliteration but retreated immediately. The moment the black shadow struggled and dissipated in the lightning, Fu Qian fired 5 air bullets at the captain's weapon without hesitation. In the eyes of the astonished crowd, the ongoing lightning reacted instantly. After a violent tremble, the lightning exploded from its source, and blue-white sparks enveloped the entire hall in an instant. Under the terrible impact, Fu Qian was inevitably thrown back. Moments later, as the lightning receded, Fu Qian climbed up from the ground and saw several people also lying there. The old man, who was closest and weakest, had been completely charred. The captain and the man with the cropped haircut were also on their last breath. The only one standing was the porcelain-like woman, Su Jiao. At that moment, leaning on her knife, she looked at himself with complex eyes. Her whole body was in a state of glass-like fissures, as if she could shatter at any moment. It was a brutal sight. It's not over yet. Fu Qian, equally battered, still hadn't received the containment success prompt. Narrowing his eyes and scanning the area, Fu Qian noticed that not far from the old man's corpse, a notebook shone brilliantly, with pages flipping on their own. It fell out? Fu Qian's heart stirred, and as he watched the crimson blood light on the notebook that appeared to come alive, he grabbed it in his hand. The next moment, He felt pain in his palm. Almost instantly, a chill and shadowy presence enveloped him. Fu Qian felt his mind swiftly being filled with an insatiable lust for killing, and his rationality rapidly dissipated. As expected, this thing wanted to possess him through the notebook. The evil god surely had formidable vitality. While Fu Qian marveled, he lifted his right hand. Caressing under his ribcage, he found the wound. Chapter 12 Special Rewards 1. What was that move called again? Fu Qian looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, taking a long breath. That skill he had never had the chance to use. Visceral crit, seize the opportunity, pass through the wound and directly damage the opponent's viscera, dealing devastating damage. Without any hesitation, he extended his hand into the wound beneath the ribcage. The warm touch came through, his 5 fingers like bloodthirsty snakes, rapidly twisting and elongating. Countless tiny tentacles grew wildly, penetrating deep into the flesh and fusing tightly together. Die. For me. His right hand suddenly clenched, and the visceral critical strike was unleashed. Amidst a sky of bloodlight splattering, Fu Qian felt as if his flesh and soul were being hollowed out by this strike. Sand points decreased by 1, sand points decreased by 1, sand points decreased by 1. A series of fine whimpers filled his brain, tearing at his consciousness. A torrent of warnings about the decrease in sand points crazily flashed, taking away 7 points before stopping. The whimpering also disappeared. Phew. That must really be the end of it, Fu Qian exhaled. Lifting his head, in the shocked and perplexed gazes of the captain and Su Jiao, Fu Qian arched his eyebrows and stood with his hands behind his back, exuding the aura of a master. Containment conditions met. Number 133 successfully contained. The notification of successful containment came through, and the scene in front of him rapidly dissipated, returning Fu Qian to the warehouse. Mission complete. Evaluation. God-blocking demise. Congratulations. You not only successfully thwarted the advent of the evil god's offspring but even inflicted irreparable damage on it yourself. This is an incredible feat. You have taught divine beings a lesson with your mortal body. The title of a mad yet calm thug is rightfully yours. This incident caused severe casualties, leading to the fall of a Night Watchman member, and has drawn high attention within the Night Watchman, with relevant information being strictly classified. Enemies slain, Godson, 22 maggot people, rewards, sand points plus 31, inspiration plus 5, special kill reward, thug. Would you like to replay the event recap? It's finally over. In the warehouse, the previous anomalies had already disappeared. As Fu Qian let out a sigh of relief, his first instinct was to reach out and feel his stomach. That visceral crit really left quite the impression. After confirming all his internal parts were still there, Fu Qian finally began to inspect his rewards. God-blocking demise, this evaluation is quite something, mainly stemming from his feat of deicide, probably. As for the kills, it clearly included the count of maggot people. Considering the increase in sand points, it seemed that his earlier spree of racking up kills inside did pay off. The losses in sand points this time were quite severe, so any extra supplement was welcome. With this reward, he now had 43 sand points. Inspiration went up by another 5, who knows what he would see next time. However, beyond these, the main reward was only a single item. Wasn't that somewhat unreasonable? Fu Qian furrowed his brow, flipping to his special kill reward. Thug, a transcendent form, a consumable. Using it will upgrade you to this form, and the process is irreversible. A robust body, swift speed, allowing you to completely break free from human limitations, altering the very essence of life. Flesh is frail, flesh ascends. This. Fu Qian was rarely stupefied for a moment. Transcendent form? The name alone made it hard not to think of the transcendence. Recalling his 4 Night Watchman teammates from before, Fu Qian had a deep impression of Su Jiao's terrifying blade light. That speed and killing power were not something any swordsmanship master could describe, it was a power unique to transcendence. If he wasn't misunderstanding, could this item transform him to be like them? Without doing anything, just use it and become a superhuman? Are such good things really possible? But still, he needed to be cautious. After all, the process was irreversible. Fu Qian touched his chin, hesitating for perhaps 2 seconds. Warning, the item will disappear after use. Do you confirm to use it? Confirm. This kind of opportunity was impossible to give up. After all, having worked so hard for so long, wouldn't it be a waste not to use it now? As Fu Qian confirmed, a warm current surged into his body. The next moment, it seemed as if all the blood in his body was boiling. His heart, like an overclocked motor, started to beat furiously, accompanied by all his muscles rapidly contracting and expanding. After a while, Fu Qian opened his eyes, his heartbeat had returned to normal, and his body was filled with a power he had never felt before. Fu Qian tried clenching his fist and could feel the muscles on his arm twined like steel wires. He was no longer an ordinary person, and the feeling deep in his heart made Fu Qian acutely aware of this fact. What a great item, indeed a reward worthy of slaying a god. The chances of succeeding in future missions had just increased a lot. Work for the day is complete, thank you for your efforts, you may now leave the warehouse, see you tomorrow. As the reminder sounded, Fu Qian took off his work badge. I'm really quite exhausted. The work today had been tougher than imagined and had taken quite a toll on him mentally. The scenery changed, and he was back in the familiar confines of his home. Fu Qian shook his head and quickly realized he hadn't eaten all day. Hesitating over whether to cook some simple noodles or order takeaway as a treat, Fu Qian suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. He looked down and found that his normally well-fitting clothes were now bursting at the seams, the buttons as if they were about to give way. Realizing something, Fu Qian rushed into the bathroom. The person in the mirror was both familiar and strange. His body, formerly somewhat lean, now seemed inflated like a balloon. Smooth lines, a perfect physique, every muscle sharply defined. His every move was filled with explosive power. The reward obtained from the scene could actually be brought out. What kind of job had he taken on exactly? Fu Qian washed his face, trying to calm himself down. Though his title was thug, luckily he hadn't grown a scruffy beard, and his skin even seemed finer and smoother now. Is this what's trendy now, a thug in a suit? Exiting the bathroom, Fu Qian thought of something and pointed his finger towards a water bottle on the table. Pop! Water splashed everywhere. The bottle was punctured by an invisible air bullet, spilling water all over the table. All was silent. What would you do if you suddenly weren't human anymore? Fu Qian had never really thought about this question before. If the 30,000 a day that previously kept him from being dirt poor altered his perception of money, then becoming a thug had changed his concept of life itself. This change was so significant that it took him the time it takes to eat a burger to digest this reality. Taking a big gulp of Coke, Fu Qian watched the men and women inside McDonald's, full of emotion. This was his habit, to eat junk food after every big bout of work. It was a satisfaction filled with indulgence and decadence, feeling fantastic. From childhood, Fu Qian had always been someone who didn't conform to norms, otherwise, he wouldn't have ended up in such a poor and distressed state. But no matter what, the pressure of survival was still there, and he'd had to scurry around for a living. Now that suddenly the pressure to survive was gone, and he might not even be human anymore, when you really think about it, is the feeling of losing your life's goals overnight a joyful one? Yes, it was absolutely thrilling. Fu Qian answered himself without hesitation. Although he was a freelancer, he had nothing in common with those melancholic, artistic youths. He was a pragmatic person and disliked such pretentious thinking. Given a million chances, he would give the same answer every time. Nothing was more valuable than having more choices. As he was contemplating life, his phone on the table suddenly rang. Chapter 13 Shocking Young Master Qin 1 Qin Mings. Upon seeing the incoming call number, Fu Qian cheerfully answered it. Are you not at home? The person on the other end of the phone obviously sounded a bit puzzled. I'm eating downstairs. Rare sight, you actually went out to eat. Mr. Qin's words were tinged with irony. You're not standing at my door, are you? What do you think? Hurry up and roll back here, I went back home over the weekend and brought you some local products. Forget it, I'll come down to find you. I've got things to do later, I'll just leave the stuff at your doorstep. Fu Qian couldn't have asked for more and immediately agreed before hanging up the phone. As a seasoned homebody, this brother Qin Mings was one of the few friends Fu Qian had. He was several years older than Fu Qian and could be called a young talent. He came from a well-off family, was a sportsman, a social butterfly, fluent in 5 languages, and had graduated from a prestigious university at a young age. Now he was interning at a large law firm, aspiring to become a professional litigant. Such a person, by all accounts, should have nothing to do with Fu Qian, yet they somehow became friends. In his words, without a professional keeping an eye on you, you'd definitely become a societal hazard, and seeing you gives me an inexplicable sense of mission. 5 minutes later, a tall figure pushed open the door of McDonald's and strode towards Fu Qian. Can't you eat something healthier for once when you go out? Holy shit. Qin Mings, dressed in a suit and shoes, stopped 2 steps away from Fu Qian. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief. What the hell happened to you? Oh, I've been working out recently. Facing Qin Mings's baffled amazement, Fu Qian had his answer ready and wore an innocent face. He knew the changes in his body were somewhat exaggerated. He was not short to begin with, but rather thin, and standing in front of Qin Mings, he used to look like a twig. But after his transformation into a thug, although still not as big as Qin Mings, He was a completely different person with a robust sense of strength all over his body. You work out? And you got fit so fast. How long has it been since we saw each other? Kin Ming's, now sitting down, still couldn't believe the reality before him. Each to their own skill. Fu Qian continued to bullshit. But weren't you about to go bankrupt? That's why I need to invest in myself even more. I'm planning to change tracks. Becoming a kept man has officially been added to my career plan. Right up until he left, Ken Mings was still shaking his head in shock, looking at Fu Qian's physique. Indeed, everyone has their own talents. I don't know how much suffering I'd have to endure to get like this. I'd rather trade it for 3 languages. You've got the natural makings of a kept man. I'll introduce you to some wealthy women in a few days. Don't forget me when you're living the good life. Will do, I'll never forget your kindness. After a shocked young Master Qin left, Fu Qian casually returned home, only to find 2 large cardboard boxes waiting at his doorstep. Really afraid I'd starve to death, huh? Fu Qian blinked and carried the boxes into his house. Work begins today. Warning, containment breach. Name, Cocoon Room, code, 2292. Today's work content has been updated. Enter the containment scene of 2292. Complete recontainment, ha. The familiar style, the familiar scent. This warehouse just isn't comfortable without a breach each day. The next day, when Fu Qian entered the warehouse, he unsurprisingly encountered another breach incident. This time, the anomaly in the warehouse was even stranger. Shadows of strange cocoons roamed the air, each composed of white and black threads. The cocoons would flicker in and out of sight, occasionally twisting as if something inside wanted to come to life. Entering containment scene of 2292. 1%, 3%, 10%, 50%, 98%, 100%, loading complete. Emerging from the cocoon is a painful process, and humanity's thirst for power is endless. However, every step in exploring transcendental powers is filled with danger. Undeveloped younglings are exceedingly fragile, and danger could come from anywhere. Condition for containment success: ensure Wen Li successfully advances to the 6th phase. Hiss. The moment the containment condition appeared, Fu Qian took a sharp breath. Putting aside who Wen Li was, this turned out to be a protection mission. As everyone knows, almost all games include protection, escort, and rescue missions. They are always the most troublesome. They were also Fu Qian's least favorite. Just thinking about those NPCs who like to run around courting death made Fu Qian seriously consider throwing in the towel. Choose the skills you wish to carry. The familiar skill interface appeared again. Fu Qian checked and noticed that Thug was not an option this time. It seems that it had fully integrated with him and was no longer considered an additional skill. Without any hesitation, Fu Qian took all his skills with him. Skills: Air Bullet, Visceral Critical Strike, Cat School, Weapon, none. The scene blurred before him in the next moment, signaling a change of environment. Fu Qian immediately braced for combat. He couldn't help it, his previous encounters had left a deep impression. Each time he arrived, the situation was extremely perilous. However, this time it vastly exceeded his expectations. Blue skies and clear waters, grass and shady trees. A rare and beautiful scenery unfolded before his eyes. Underfoot lay a massive circular plaza, constructed entirely of stones similar to white marble. Looking ahead, a row of grand and imposing white villas came into view, lavishly decorated without being ostentatious, exuding an air of exceptional dignity. In front of the villas, several servants in uniform busied themselves. This doesn't seem right. Fu Qian had an ominous premonition. Setting aside the fact that it was completely different from the previous scenarios, he found it hard to relate this setting to the chrysalis illusion in the warehouse. When things are out of the norm, there must be demons at work. He had to proceed with caution. Don't look around. At that moment, someone behind him chided in a low voice. Fu Qian turned to see an enormous figure. The individual was a burly man nearly 2 meters tall, with rugged features and eyes as large as cowbells. Bulging muscles, a sturdy body, all tightly enclosed in a black uniform. He was a veritable Schwarzenegger plus. He clapped Fu Qian on the shoulder with an arm thicker than Fu Qian's waist, his expression grave. The Wen family has paid a fortune for our services. We must exhibit professionalism. In the past month, they have experienced 2 assassination attempts, including one by a transcendent. We must not take this lightly. Fu Qian looked down at himself, dressed in a uniform identical to the other man's. So, this time he was hired as a bodyguard. The Wen family? The same Wen family mentioned in Wen Li's introduction? Fu Qian blinked. How did the Wen family get tangled up with a transcendent? Isn't his mission too dangerous? How would I know? Part of the big sum the employer paid us is to keep us from asking too many questions. Schwarzenegger glared at him. But I've done some snooping on the side. On the surface, the Wen family appears to be just ordinary tycoons, but in fact, Ms. Wen of the Wen family is a genuine transcendent. It is said that she possesses an extremely rare mental type ability, and the Wen family had kept it secret and nurtured her quietly. Only recently, word got out that Wen Li is likely to advance to the 6th phase. If she indeed succeeds, the Wen family will leap into the ranks of the real elite. Unfortunately, not everyone is happy to see this outcome, and the Wen family has offended many. Thus, there've been quite a few individuals causing trouble. So that was the situation. Fu Qian gained a deeper understanding of the mission. Schwarzenegger being in this line of work meant the information was probably reliable. In that case, his mission this time was to ensure Miss Wen of the Wen family successfully advanced. A 6th phase transcendent, how does that level compare to his own, he wondered. Of course, what he found even more puzzling was that, at the end of the day, it was just about a transcendence promotion. How could that possibly be related to the containment item in the warehouse? Chapter 14. Our slacking off is justified. Despite confusion, the task still had to be done. Just as I was about to learn more from Schwarzenegger, the doors of the villa suddenly opened. A man resembling a butler, leading a group of men and women, walked straight towards us. Thank you for your hard work, Captain Gu. Upon seeing Fu Qian and Schwarzenegger, the butler bowed politely. So, Schwarzenegger's last name was Gu. You flatter me, it's all part of the job. It was clear that, despite business-like courtesy, Captain Gu was quite pleased with the respect shown. The butler continued to exchange pleasantries with a beaming smile. At that moment, a car approached rapidly from a distance, and the butler's smile vanished as he hurriedly went to meet it. I thought as much. It wouldn't be for the mere purpose of extending courtesy to bodyguards. Seeing the neatly lined-up group of butlers, I could surmise that the person arriving in the car must be of no ordinary status. The speeding car barely slowed down as it crossed the plaza, pulling up abruptly in front of the butlers. As the car door opened, several people poured out. The leader was a young man in his 20s, fairly good-looking. His hair was neatly combed, dressed in a white suit and white shoes, slick with hair gel and looking dapper. I've brought reinforcements, where's my sister Wen Li? As he faced the welcoming butler, the gentleman wore a jesting smile, gesturing towards the people who alighted with him. There were 3 others accompanying him, 2 men and 1 woman, all quite young except for one middle-aged man. Young Master Yi, good to see you, the young miss is resting inside. The butler responded with a smile, his expression showing 100 times more reverence than before. Are they all transcendents? Fu Qian squinted. The presence of these few reminded him of the night watchmen he had encountered before, possessing a sense of power far beyond that of ordinary people. It seemed like my role as a mere bodyguard was merely to take the bullets. These were the real guards. But for me, this might actually be a good thing. Perhaps the task would be completed without me having to do anything? It didn't feel that simple. Of course, based on past experience, Fu Qian was pessimistic about this. Hiss. Schwarzenegger also sucked in a breath at this point. 4 transcendents. He spoke rapidly in a louder voice than before. To find such reinforcements, it seems the rumors are true. The trouble the Wen family is facing is big indeed. No wonder they are spending so much money on hiring people. Don't forget what I said before we arrived. Be smart. We're getting paid to work, but if the opponent is a transcendent, the priority is to sound the alarm, not foolishly rush in. They wouldn't place all their bets on us. At most, we're just cannon fodder. Besides these few, there might even be night watchmen around. Huh, got it. Fu Qian nodded. Although Captain Gu's capabilities were average, one could tell he was an experienced hand, with good judgment. His thought process was clear and, quite admirably, he had no intention of letting his subordinates die in vain. However, Fu Qian still wanted to remind him of something. The hearing of transcendence is generally quite good. Indeed, just as he was about to follow the butler inside to find the people, young Master Yi suddenly stopped in his tracks. Slowly turning his head, he looked over with a mocking smile. Well, there goes any hope of slacking off, caught in the act. Fu Qian sighed in sympathy. Now the pressure was on Captain Gu. Realizing something was amiss, Captain Gu immediately linked it to what he had just said, his breath catching. To his surprise, though, young Master Yi's gaze swept around and settled on Fu Qian. Is this the bodyguard you hired? Why such a pretty boy? Is this guy nuts? Fu Qian frowned unexpectedly. The attention had fallen on him. So the pretty boy can't stand someone being prettier than him, huh? After all, even though the kid seems slick and powdered, he's really no match for me. Especially after transforming into a thug, his weak physique is compensated for, and now he's practically a walking hormone bomb. Otherwise, how would he dare to plan a career as a kept man? In this critical period, in order to ensure safety, we must utilize all our resources. This is an elite team member brought by Captain Gu. For some reason, Young Master Yi suddenly targeted this bodyguard, but the butler still habitually tried to smooth things over. An elite team member? Young Master Yi let out a cold laugh. How elite can he be? Care to give me a demonstration? Is this guy ever going to give it a rest? As someone purely focused on the mission, Fu Qian had zero interest in the legendary rich second generation acting like a sheep in wolf's clothing. Is that okay, Captain Gu? Even though the butler also found it senseless, he obviously didn't want to go against young Master Yi's wishes and turned to look at Schwarzenegger Gu. He's still on a mission. Captain Gu's face changed color slightly as he glanced at Fu Qian. Having mixed in the underworld for many years, he could naturally tell that this young Master Yi was no ordinary person. Though his own men were strictly trained, at the end of the day, they were mere mortals, and clashing with a transcendent would be unwise. Demonstrating one's strength to reassure the employer is also part of the job description, right? Young Master Yi clearly was not planning to let Fu Qian off the hook easily. From the beginning until now, this puny bodyguard hadn't even deigned to glance at him, and such baseless arrogance really made one's blood boil. Oh, so how would you like to demonstrate? Seeing Captain Gu at a loss for words, Fu Qian spoke up directly. Show us whatever you're good at then. Finally willing to engage, young Master Yi smiled contentedly. There's too many to count, and it's not convenient to show them all here. This conflict seemed inevitable, and Fu Qian was anything but polite. After becoming a thug, he hadn't had a chance to fight with a transcendent yet, so even beating up a dummy would be fine. If things got too bloody, he could just spend one sand point and start over, no big deal. As soon as these words were spoken, even the butler's face changed color. Captain Gu went so far as to pull him to the side. Haha. Young Master Yi was stunned for a moment before realizing the implication of Fu Qian's words, and he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Interesting, I didn't expect you guys could actually hire such an expert. How about this, since you don't know what to showcase, why don't you spar with our little girl? Young Master Yi pulled over a female companion. Now you can't say I believed you, right? A little girl. Fu Qian glanced at the one pushed forward. She was certainly young, but her style left much to be desired. Hair dyed in red and blue stripes, eyeshadow heavy enough to rival a panda's, her revealing dress a definitive clownish woman. Indeed, these days if you don't deck yourself out in strange attire, you're not considered a quirky character. Seeing Fu Qian sizing her up, the woman smiled seductively and tossed a flirtatious glance his way. Handsome, go easy on me. Don't worry, special talents are my thing. That's good, that's good. The bad girl laughed so hard she trembled and exaggeratedly patted her chest with her hand. The next moment, with a flick and an extension of her hands, her fingers held two shiny blades. Chapter 15 Passive Go Slow 1 This little girl is quite vicious. Fu Qian looked expressionlessly at the woman who had transformed into a wolverine. To deal with an ordinary bodyguard, she even brought out this kind of thing. Captain Gu beside him had already changed color abruptly and stealthily made a hand signal, telling him to concede as quickly as possible when the time came. Fu Qian waved his hand, indicating not to worry. These blades looked intimidating, but they were not long enough. Unless they hit a vital spot, they couldn't cause much damage, at most a skin laceration or flesh wound. Generally speaking, those who liked to play with such flashy things often weren't that strong in ability. At this time, the butler had already very thoughtfully arranged for people to clear the surroundings, cleaning up an open space. He didn't necessarily enjoy this kind of farce, but he wasn't going to stop it now that things had developed to this point. Don't blink, big brother, I'm about to start. The little wolf girl smiled charmingly and called out in a soft voice. She stuck out her bright red tongue and licked the blade on her fingertip. The next moment, she transformed into a shadow and rushed in front of Fu Qian in an instant, swinging her hand towards his face. It won't do. Confronted with this malicious strike, Fu Qian just frowned. Am I too strong, or is she too weak? There's absolutely none of that sensation of facing Miss Win's terrifying blade light. Perhaps in the eyes of others, this woman moved as fast as lightning, unstoppable. But Fu Qian didn't even move his lower body. He simply turned his face and dodged the strike. More than that, he even turned his head back at the fastest speed. If someone's eyesight weren't good, they might think that the little wolf girl had missed. You've got some skills. The woman swiftly stepped back and sized him up, doubt and surprise in her gaze. Unfortunately, Fu Qian didn't pay her any attention and instead glanced over at young Master Yi's side. The middle-aged man who had gotten out of the car with him seemed obviously stronger than the others to Fu Qian. If that man made a move, it would probably be more meaningful than the little wolf girl's attempts. At this moment, the latter had a serious expression, squinting and staring at him intently. To get him to take action, it might require a bit of provocation. Come on again. The little wolf girl clenched her teeth. Not sure if it was rage fueled by feeling looked down upon, but this time her speed was even faster than before, with her blade-tipped fingers producing a sharp whistling sound. However, the next moment, the little wolf girl felt a pain in her wrist and was shocked to find her arm had been grabbed by the target with one hand. Even though her target was within an arm's reach, she couldn't continue her attack. Turns out I've become this strong. Fukion, holding her wrist, mused internally. Which tier of transcendent are you? 8th phase. Who on earth are you? Not understanding why he was asking this, even the not-so-smart little wolf girl realized she had badly misjudged the situation. How could this guy possibly be just an ordinary bodyguard? 8th phase? Your senior brother is much stronger than you. Fukion snorted. She's actually at the 8th phase? It feels like I could handle 10 of her with no problem. The thug form seems to be more powerful than I thought. As for the little wolf girl with a twisted expression, Fukion certainly had no sense of pity. She hadn't been polite at all in her approach. She pulled out her claws to deal with an ordinary person, aiming each move at his face. It was clear that she was keenly trying to anticipate young Master Yi's desires, perhaps aiming to disfigure him. How malicious of you, you just destroyed a child's dreams. Fukion took a breath and tightened his grip. The little wolf girl screamed in agony as the blades fell from her hands to the ground. Before her scream ended, a wild force hit her side, sending her flying like a cannonball. Amidst a loud crash, the little wolf girl slammed into the car they had arrived in, struggling 3 times without managing to get up. Not bad, right? After kicking his opponent away, Fukion turned back. Young Master Yi's face was a marvelous sight at this moment, his eyes glued to Fukion's leg that had just kicked someone. Clearly, even he couldn't have managed such a dashing kick. Not just him, Captain Gu's eyeballs were about to fall to the ground. Be careful. The middle-aged man beside young Master Yi moved forward with a guarded face, shielding him behind his body. Good. Seeing the middle-aged man about to make a move, Fukion was not alarmed but rather elated. The woman just now was really not enough of a challenge. What's that old saying? If you're seeking thrills, then go all the way. Since they had started to fight, with these people's approach, making peace was out of the question, so he might as well knock them all down as fast as possible. Win Li has died, containment failed, evaluation, negative, dereliction of duty, punishment, sand points decreased by 5, current sand points are 37. Just as a big fight was about to erupt, a prompt suddenly rang in his ears. Are you freaking kidding me? I knew this mission wouldn't be so simple, but to die just like this? Fukion, teleported back to the warehouse, was quite shocked. Without any noise, and certainly as a transcendent of no low level, within a heavily guarded Win family mansion, she just died without a sound? It seemed his premonition was not wrong, this mission was far more difficult than he had imagined. And to think it considered him negligent, reducing his sand points by 5 directly. That was equivalent to 5 lives, utterly infuriating. Fukion was incredibly saddened in that moment, the joy of leveling up completely washed away. He decided to put all the blame on young Master Yi and his band of hooligans. Event replay. Instead of joining the fray again immediately, Fukion decisively chose to replay the process that had just occurred. 5 minutes and 12 seconds, Win Li died, mission failed. Consumed 1 sand point, attempting containment again. After confirming the time of Win Li's death, Fukion touched the mist gate. The Win family mansion appeared once more. This time, without waiting for Captain Gu to give any admonishment, Fukion took the initiative to approach him with his question. I heard Miss Wen is a genius transcendent, currently at least at the 7th phase, does she really need our protection? Boy, you're quite informed. Captain Gu looked at Fukion with surprise. I just heard it through the grapevine. It's said that her abilities are of the psychic type, and before ascending to the middle tier, her physical constitution is very fragile, barely better than an ordinary person. This is also why so many assassins have recently appeared, all wanting to snuff her out in the cradle, because once she upgrades, she'll be much more difficult to deal with. This was indeed an explanation. Captain Gu's gossiping abilities were not bad. Fukion looked up to see the butler walking out of the villa, and soon young Master Yi's car would arrive. The next step was to figure out how Miss Wen had died. According to the way things had unfolded just then, Miss Wen would die in 5 minutes and 12 seconds. He had at most 5 minutes now. But how to confirm it? After the previous physical exchange, Fukion had a full understanding of his own combat capabilities. Around the square were a dozen all-white pillars, all carved out of solid stone. Seeing young Master Yi's car approaching, Fukion quietly neared one of the pillars and fiercely kicked the base of it. Half a minute later, accompanied by a muffled sound, the pillar crashed to the ground with a loud thud. Screams erupted, and the piercing alarm rang out instantly. Young Master Yi's car hadn't even come to a complete stop when 4 people burst out of it like lightning. The welcoming team behind the butler instantly descended into chaos. Seizing the chaos, Fu Qian blended into the stream of people and sneaked into the villa. Chapter 16 Unpreventable 3 minutes left. Compared to the outside, the interior decoration of the villa was even more sumptuous. Inside, there was also a large group of bodyguards in matching suits, who had already received the signal and were now quickly surging outwards. Fu Qian's appearance here undoubtedly left the group bewildered. Without a word, Fu Qian moved swiftly through the crowd, triggering countless alarms along the way. Ignoring calls from others, when someone tried to stop him, he deftly dodged them. The villa instantly descended into chaos. The piercing sound of the alarms grew more intense. Fu Qian clearly noticed a large number of bodyguards gathering at the door of a certain room. 1 minute left. It must be here. The bodyguards were so nervous about this area, the likelihood that Miss Wen was here was high. Fu Qian strode forward, casually picking up a stone table and hurling it out. Amidst the whistling sound, the table turned into a frisbee, its terrifying momentum forcing the bodyguards to retreat, creating a path forcefully cleared in front. Fu Qian followed closely, without hesitation, kicking the door open. There were 2 women in the room. One of them in her early 20s, with a pretty face and painted brows, had the demeanor of a lady from a reputable family. At that moment, she was sitting at a table, holding a bowl of soup, probably about to drink it. It was very likely Wen Li. Fu Qian did not hesitate to fire an air bullet. Although it was still uncertain how she was going to die, one thing was certain, the action she was doing would lead to her death. So stop right there. After many days of practice, Fu Qian's accuracy had greatly improved. The air bullet blew the bowl in the woman's hand to fragments, and amid shrieks, the steaming soup instantly drenched her, soaking her through. At this moment, footsteps sounded from behind, and a group of people rushed in, surrounding Fu Qian. "Who are you? Who sent you?" The one leading the charge, a middle-aged man, bore a slight resemblance to the soup-drinking woman. His face was ashen, and his eyes bore into Fu Qian as if he wanted to devour him. 51 seconds, 52 seconds, 53 seconds. Fu Qian ignored him, silently counting. Until 52 seconds past 5 minutes, the failure prompt for the mission did not appear. The soup-drinking woman was standing there just fine, protected by a circle of bodyguards. Good. Fu Qian was very satisfied with this outcome and turned to glance at the middle-aged man. "And you are? You don't know me?" The middle-aged man laughed furiously, staring intently at Fu Qian. "I am Wen Xiuxian. I'll ask you one last time, who are you? Who sent you?" "Wen Xiuxian? I don't know him." Now that the other party had introduced himself, Fu Qian nodded and pointed to Captain Gu behind the crowd. "Fu Qian, an elite team member of Captain Gu's team. He is the one who sent me." "Damn it." Schwarzenegger Gu, who was already doubting his life, nearly fell to the ground when he heard Fu Qian's words. And then, Fu Qian changed the subject and pointed at the soup-drinking woman. "I just saved your daughter's life." "Huh?" Wen Xiuxian was originally furious and about to order the 2 men to be captured, but he paused, somewhat stunned by Fu Qian's words. "What do you mean? Hard to understand? If you're confused, you can ask the esteemed lady behind your precious daughter." Fu Qian pointed at the young woman dressed as a maid behind Wen Li. He was now 80% sure that there was something wrong with this woman. "Me?" The young maid, noticing everyone's gaze turned toward her, was momentarily flustered. "I don't understand what's happening, I haven't done anything." Seeing the other party desperately denying it, Fu Qian just watched without speaking. Wen Xiuxian seemed to sense that something was amiss as well, looking thoughtfully at the broken bowl on the ground. Then, with a signal from his eyes, 2 people quickly restrained the maid, while someone else collected the remnants of the soup from the broken bowl. The results came back quickly. "It's really poisoned." Wen Xiuxian looked at the young maid, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Fang Ting, my Wen family has treated you well, why did you do this?" I really didn't know." The maid named Fang Ting had a stunned look in her eyes as she fervently shook her head in denial. "You cooked the soup for Wen Li, and you say you didn't know? Tell me, who sent you?" "I truly didn't." Watching the drama unfold before him, Fu Qian paid attention to Wen Li, the protagonist of the incident. The recently escaped genius's complexion was a bit pale, but she remained surprisingly calm, seemingly numb to such occurrences. On the other side, Fang Ting kept repeating "I don't know," and Wen Xiuxian appeared to have reached the limits of his patience. After asking a couple more times, he ordered his men to drag Fang Ting away, presumably to be harshly interrogated. Just then, Fang Ting's pleas for innocence abruptly stopped, and she stood still on the spot. After a few seconds of silence, she let out a shrill scream from her mouth, the sound unspeakably crazed. The next moment, as if she were possessed by divine strength, she forcefully broke free from two bodyguards, hugged the still dazed Wenli, and bared her ghastly white teeth to bite down. Crack! The sound of ripping like a craft paper bag emanated, and the frenzied Fang Ting was punched and sent flying before she could bite anyone. In face of Fang Ting's sudden attack, Fu Qian did not step in to rescue but chose to observe quietly. In his view, such a surprise attack, although unexpected, would not pose any real threat. It was an opportunity to see if there was any exploitable strength. If the Wen family couldn't handle even this, they should give up the idea of being a power player. Considering the way her body twisted upon hitting the ground, it seemed certain she wouldn't survive. Fu Qian looked up and saw that the person who saved Wenli was none other than the middle-aged man accompanying young Master Yi. It appeared that this group had already searched around outside and returned. She must have been hypnotized. It seems the other side has an expert in this field, the middle-aged man said, inspecting Fang Ting's body and nodding to Wen Xiuxian. Thank you, Master Ji. Wen Xiuxian, still recovering from the shock, thanked the middle-aged man. Uncle Wen, you're too polite, it was just a helping hand. Young Master Yi finally found an opportunity to make his presence felt and stepped out with a laugh. With us here, nothing will happen to Wenli. Before he could finish speaking, one side of the room's wall suddenly shattered. A huge white pillar, with a thunderous wind sound tearing through the air, instantly engulfed Wenli's figure. When Li deceased, containment failed. In the midst of chaos, Fu Qian looked through the gap in the wall and saw a gigantic, oddly shaped figure. The monster was at least 3 meters tall, covered from head to toe with what appeared to be a layer of stone, with its head a simple sphere with several holes. At that moment, it stood before a broken pillar, precisely the one Fu Qian had earlier kicked and broken. The severed pillar had been hurled like a javelin, crossing tens of meters in the blink of an eye to execute a precise kill. The previous sudden madness and attack by the maid were not expected to succeed, they served solely to locate for this creature. Amid Wen Xiuxian's earth-shattering roar, the bodyguards finally reacted and started attacking, but all were thwarted by the monster's thick stone shell. After breaking through the resistance, the monster plunged into the lake next to the villa and disappeared in an instant. Chapter 17 Eat My Gun. One professional. Fu Qian, back at the warehouse, was still savoring the assassination he had just carried out. The plan was clearly devised by professionals, each step interlocking seamlessly with the next. First was the hypnotizing of the maid beside the target, attempting to stealthily poison and dispose of the target. If that failed, there were transcendent beings lying in ambush outside, ready to use the maid to pinpoint the location and deliver a fatal strike. It's truly not easy for Miss Wen to remain alive. Sand points decrease by 1, entering containment scenario. As Fu Qian marveled, he once again made contact with the mist gate. This time he repeated his trick, breaking a stone pillar with a kick and blending into the crowd to infiltrate the villa. Bursting through the door once more, Wenli was indeed still drinking soup. Stop right there. Fu Qian bellowed angrily, once again blowing up the bowl in Wenli's hands with an air bullet, drenching Miss Wen from head to toe. As for the maid named Fang Ting, Fu Qian still chose not to eliminate her directly but let her be controlled again by Wen Xiuxian's men. What if she died on the spot, and the person outside sneakily slipped away? He was still waiting for the attack from outside. To make the stone giant attack at the same time from the same direction, he even chose the same pillar to kick. Now, everything was proceeding according to the script. Fu Qian silently counted the time. Why? Who sent you? I don't know. I really didn't. Wen Xiuxian and the maid once again reached the death dialogue stage, and with a scream, as the maid lunged at Wenli, Fu Qian sprang into action. He rushed forward ahead of the middle-aged man surnamed Ji, kicking Wenli into a corner of the wall. How dare you? Wenli's father was enraged, roaring as he rushed to the side of the fallen Wenli. The middle-aged man surnamed Ji arrived at this moment, swinging a silent punch at Fu Qian. This was more like it, far better than any offbeat little wolf girl. Even though it looked unremarkable, the force behind the middle-aged man's punch was much stronger than that from the person with blade shards in their hand. Fu Qian didn't dodge or flinch, unhesitantly meeting the punch with one of his own. A surge of fierce power came through, shaking Fu Qian to the core, making his arm tingle with pain. Interesting, this was the first character that had managed to make him bleed. Of course, the middle-aged man surnamed Ji fared much worse. Propelled backward by the powerful punch, he staggered 3 steps, his face flushed red, obviously injured. Unable to hide his shocked expression, the middle-aged man was about to say something when suddenly a massive roar filled the air, and a white stone pillar soared through the wall, landing right where Wenli had been standing. Debris scattered everywhere, dust rising in clouds. Wen Xiuxian, who had been holding Wenli and roaring, was suddenly quiet, staring blankly at the stone pillar embedded in the floor. If he had been just a moment slower, Wen Li would have been reduced to dust and bones. This is... Fu Qian paid no attention to the bewildered father, instead grabbing the stone pillar. The quality was really not bad, not even a crack after such an impact. Praising it, he took a deep breath. In the next instant, Fu Qian exerted his full strength, ripping the stone pillar out from the wall. Amidst the terrified gazes of those around, Fu Qian struck a cool pose, flinging the stone pillar back the way it had come. The pillar once again transformed into a javelin, instantly traversing dozens of meters through the air. Outside the villa, the stone giant was performing its insensitivity act when a violent wind sound came through, and to its horror, it saw the stone pillar it had thrown returning. The rock-covered body was highly defensive but lacked agility. Even as it tried its best to dodge, one of its right legs was hit solidly and smashed into two pieces. Among the flying debris, a symbol of blood finally splattered out, red. The stone giant collapsed with a thunderous crash, hitting the ground hard. At the same time, following the thrown stone pillar, Fu Qian also jumped through the large hole in the wall to the outside. It seemed to sense the danger. Although one leg was broken, the stone giant had not lost all its fighting strength. With a muffled roar, it grabbed a car and threw it hard at another stone pillar. The pillar instantly broke into several pieces, and the luxury car was completely wrecked. It looks familiar. Upon closer look, that seems to be young Master Yi's car. That car does have a troubled fate, wasn't it trashed last time by little wolf girl? Crackling. Pieces of rocks on the ground came to life, rapidly gathering at the stone giant's legs. A strangely shaped new leg quickly formed, and the stone giant barely recovered its ability to move, struggling to stand up and run towards the lake. Think you can escape? Fu Qian, who had followed, kicked another stone pillar nearby and aimed as he threw it. Boom. The ensuing scene was nothing short of brutal. The stone giant was hit squarely in the back by the flying javelin, and under the immense impact, it was instantly smashed to the ground, completely losing its ability to move. The sound of rocks breaking echoed, and stone slabs peeled off the stone giant, revealing a naked man in only his underwear. The naked man lay on the ground, evidently unconscious. The closest bodyguards immediately surrounded him. Fu Qian didn't join the commotion, and even put down another stone pillar he was holding. His instincts told him it wouldn't be that simple. The next moment, a sudden boom erupted from the ground, and the group of bodyguards surrounding the naked man fell one after another, clutching their heads. The only person still standing helped the unconscious naked man to his feet and dove into the water. As expected, there was an accomplice, already mixed in among the bodyguards. Who exactly are you, and what is going on? When Xiuxian and his party finally caught up at this moment. Being quite a figure himself, by this time he had lost his initial shock and said to Fu Qian with a stern voice. Fu Qian glanced at the middle-aged man surnamed Ji behind him, who was shielding Wen Li, young Master Yi, and the others behind him. He was smart enough to know that now was the time to stick together to avoid any distraction strategies. Aside from being pale, Ms. Wen seemed to be alright. That kick just now might have looked vicious, but considering Miss Wen's physical condition, Fu Qian had carefully controlled the force of his kick. Accidentally killing her with a kick would certainly not happen, at worst it would break a leg. Is this the attitude you have towards the man who saved your daughter's life? In response to Wen Xiuxian's question, Fu Qian snorted and stood with his hands behind his back. It was an indisputable fact, and Wen Xiuxian's expression went through several changes before he finally let out a sigh and formally expressed his thanks. No need for courtesy. I am merely fulfilling someone's request. There is someone who doesn't wish for her to die, said Fu Qian with a long laugh, adopting the air of a high-minded person. Fulfilling someone's request. Wen Xiuxian's eyebrows moved, and his eyes filled with doubt and surprise. May I ask who that is? There. Fu Qian pointed at Captain Gu. It was him. I am an elite member of Captain Gu's team. Uncle Wen, this man's background is unknown, we can't just trust him blindly. Not only was Wen Xiuxian utterly dumbfounded, but young Master Yi also couldn't hold back anymore, coming forward to urgently assert his presence. The attacker was down on the ground just now, but he let him go. They could be in cahoots and putting on an act. Heaven cherishes life, I simply did not wish to commit unnecessary killings, Fu Qian coldly said, spinning a tale. In reality, he hadn't been so eager to give chase just now. With an assassin around, someone like him, a high-minded individual, held value. If he had really killed the man, Wen Xiuxian, the old fox, would probably have many suspicions instantly. And why be so ruthless if he didn't intend to kill? That fellow was responsible for wasting one of his sand points, truly unforgivable. I believe him, a weak voice suddenly interjected, as the talented girl Wen Li spoke for the first time. Chapter 18. I've wanted to do that for a long time when I believe him. Wen Li's statement shocked everyone present. Little Li. Wen Xiuxian looked worried as he watched Wen Li step forward. Don't worry, if Mr. Fu had wanted to kill me, I would have been dead more than once just now. Wen Li offered a weak smile and solemnly bowed to Fu Qian. Thank you for saving my life just now. If my father said something offensive, please forgive him. If possible, I would like to continue to rely on you later on. That's more like it. Miss Wen seemed to possess a certain grace, not tainted by the mean streak common among the wealthy. Fu Qian nodded, feeling reassured. No problem. The situation is still tense, so I need everyone to follow my arrangements from now on. Who do you think you are, giving orders? Slap. A crisp sound cut off young Master Yi's words mid-sentence, and he staggered, almost falling to the ground. As if nothing had happened, Fu Qian slapped young Master Yi, then blocked a punch and a kick from a middle-aged man surnamed Ji before lightly retreating. Following the clash, the middle-aged man's mouth was bleeding, but he still rushed to support young Master Yi. He had already noticed Fu Qian's movements, but the speed was too fast, and he still failed to protect him in time. Just what kind of monster was this guy? The middle-aged man stared at Fu Qian, full of guard. Old Ji. Kill him for me. Young Master Yi struggled to stand, his left cheek burning and nearly numb. He had never suffered such humiliation in his life, driving him into a fury. However, the middle-aged man didn't move and even stopped the young master who wanted to rush forward. Setting aside the fact that this was the Wen family's property, this guy was Wen Li's savior. His strength was terrifying, it was a mystery where he came from. In terms of power, in a fight to the death, the middle-aged man had no confidence in defeating him. He was concerned that the most endangered would be the enraged young Master Yi should they engage. If the opponent was determined to kill, even if it meant getting injured, he likely couldn't protect him. Cough, cough. Seeing the situation getting out of hand, Wen Xiuxian coughed and stood up. He first comforted young Master Yi, then arranged for someone to take him down to rest. Young Master Yi had calmed down slightly by now and gave Fu Qian a look filled with resentment, indicating this wasn't over, before finally leaving to rest, surrounded by others. The butler was organizing people to clean up the mess. At that moment, the entire Wen family estate was a sorry sight, its former glory gone. Not to mention the gaping hole in the house, several of the grand pillars on the square had been broken after Fu Qian and the stone giant's destructive fight. It was a sight of utter desolation and sorrow. As one of the culprits responsible for the current situation, Fu Qian was deeply moved. Just a few days ago, he was just a homebody, not exactly feeble but with nothing more than average physical fitness. And now, in the blink of an eye, he had become a human weapon. Even after the series of battles, Fu Qian still didn't feel tired. The minor injuries he got from the fight with the middle-aged man surnamed Ji had already stopped bothering him. The thug form didn't just grant him strength and speed but also a recovery ability far beyond the norm. He really was no longer in the realm of regular humans. At this time, Wen Xiuxian finished arranging everything and approached Fu Qian with a smile. Mr. Fu, Captain Gu, please come with me. True to his role as a businessman, his emotional control was indeed at its peak. Captain Gu was still in a state of confusion, but followed Wen Xiuxian inside in a daze. Wen Li's original location had been crushed by the stone columns, now cordoned off. Fortunately, the Wen family had plenty of space, and a room was quickly made available. Mr. Fu, please take a seat. Wen Xiuxian first made sure Wen Li was settled comfortably to rest, then invited Fu Qian and Captain Gu to sit down. We've encountered a lot lately, so we're a bit sensitive. My apologies for any earlier offense. Your help with little Li's safety is greatly appreciated. No need to worry, it's my duty and responsibility, Fu Qian replied, straightening his uniform before continuing the idle chat. It looks like we'll have to trouble Captain Gu further. After probing for a long time and seeing no slips from Fu Qian, Wen Xiuxian had no other options and looked at Captain Gu with earnest sincerity. You are too polite. Captain Gu was pleasantly surprised and a little overwhelmed. The situation had developed so quickly that, although he was usually adept at handling various scenarios, he now found his mind struggling to keep up. He had been watching Fu Qian intently since earlier, feeling an unprecedented sense of unfamiliarity with his subordinate. He couldn't fathom how this man under his command had suddenly transformed into a transcendent and even twice saved his employer's life in succession. Mr. Fu, who do you think attacked us today? Wen Xiuxian turned his head to ask. This was indeed the right person to ask. I don't know. Fu Qian shook his head. But it should not be difficult to investigate. Have you encountered that big guy before? Responding to a question with another question is always a good strategy. Never seen him before. As expected, Wen Xiuxian's attention was diverted, and he slowly shook his head. We've been attacked twice before and never encountered someone like him. Today's attack revealed one thing, that the opponents are a very professional team, not mere rabble. Each one is adept at assassination, and their coordination is remarkably precise. This isn't something a makeshift group can achieve. So, although they left behind very little information, it's not impossible to track them down. A transcendent who can morph into a stone giant, someone proficient in hypnosis, a dedicated assassin squad using these criteria to search, it wouldn't be difficult to determine who they are. I'll arrange it. When Xiuxian nodded, a glint of cold light in his eyes. Though a commoner, having been a wealthy individual for so many years, he had his own pride. Actually, that big, foolish one wasn't the hardest to deal with, further commented Fu Qian. The one who came to his aid obviously specializes in disguise and infiltration. With so many people in your house, it's likely very easy for them to infiltrate like a sieve. This was indeed true. Sweat beaded on Wen Xiuxian's forehead. Then what do you think would be safe? Simple, you must have a panic room here, right? Panic rooms are almost a standard feature for the rich and powerful. After all, life is incredibly precious to them. Indeed there is one. Let Wen Li hide in the panic room by herself, minimally reducing the number of people who can come into contact with her, and preferably, no one but me should be allowed in. Wen Xiuxian naturally couldn't accept this suggestion. Are you really in a position to make such a suggestion, given your unclear background? Wen Li still needs to be taken care of now. Then there's no hope. Wait for death. Dad, go and rest. Let me have a chat with Mr. Fu. Seeing that the conversation had come to a halt, Wen Li suddenly spoke up. It's okay. Wen Li looked at her father and gently shook her head. Fine. After hesitating for a long time, Wen Xiuxian finally sighed, sending everyone away. Once everyone had left, Wen Li stared at Fu Qian's face, her gaze lingering. Thank you. You've already thanked me before. This time, it's not for saving my life. Thanks for slapping Yi Yang. I've wanted to do that for a long time. Chapter 19 Mirror 1 Is the contradiction so significant? Wen Li's words sparked a trace of interest in Fu Qian. Appearance, demeanor, speech. From whichever angle one looked, she was the very model of a damsel from a distinguished family. It was hard to imagine she would speak of slapping someone. Haha. Wen Li gave a weak smile and sighed. To speak of direct contradiction, it might not be so, but he indeed caused me significant trouble, and he himself is quite disagreeable. Trouble? Fu Qian probably guessed what the issue was. Arranged marriage? Mr. Fu is really intelligent, you guessed it right away. Wen Li looked at Fu Qian with surprise, her face showing admiration. If someone else had been praised like this by a beauty, chances are they would have been quite flattered. Unfortunately, Fu Qian was entirely unmoved by this. Having dealt with young masterkin for so many years, he was very clear that for such second-generation individuals, commercial expressions were practically a skill, whether it was surprise or flattery, their credibility was doubtful. Yes, I know many people envy my background, but being born in such a family, really, a lot of things are out of my control, and sometimes I feel suffocated. Can you understand that, Mr. Fu? I can imagine. Fu Qian nodded. But I generally attribute such feelings to having eaten too much and feeling stuffed. Wen Li's face froze. You were born into a wealthy family, not a family of immortals. Did you expect to have no troubles at all? On the bright side, at least you don't have to trade vast amounts of time, energy, or even your body, working yourself to death just for a bite to eat. Even with a full belly, you can occasionally put on an act of being profound. Only after a long silence did Wen Li speak. Mr. Fu, you really see things clearly, your free and easy nature is enviable. No need to envy, freedom is derived from power. Indeed, surviving today was totally thanks to you, and seeing someone not fall behind Master Ji in a fight is a first for me. Oh? Fu Qian's interest was piqued. What dear is that Master Ji? This. Shouldn't you know better than I would? Wen Li looked puzzled. As far as I know, Master Ji was a sixth-phase transcendent 5 years ago, and now his power is utterly unfathomable. That middle-aged Mr. Ji was already sixth phase? Fu Qian frowned. After a few exchanges, he was confident that old Ji was no match for him, so by that reckoning, wasn't he at least a sixth-phase transcendent as well? Thugs are as terrifying as ever. After reflecting, Fu Qian turned to look at Wen Li. Speaking of which, I want to ask, you're at least supposed to be a transcendent, and according to outside rumors, you're even likely to be a sixth phase, so how can you be fragile to such an extent? That's the frustrating part about the psychic system. Wen Li forced a bitter smile. The rumors are not wrong, I'm indeed close to being sixth phase, But compared to you with your iron bones and copper heads of the physical system, we in the psychic system are just too vulnerable. Transcendents are divided into 9 phases, with 7, 8, and 9 being the initial tier, 4, 5, and 6 the middle tier. Before advancing to middle tier, improvements to the psychic system's vitality are hardly noticeable. And my ability is rather special, almost the least aggressive type within the psychic system, so no need to envy. Brainless warriors have always been a man's romance. By the way, what exactly is your skill? Fu Qian was first hearing a complete description of this world's supernatural system, so naturally, he wouldn't miss this chance to learn more. A mirror, you may understand it like that. Wen Li did not conceal her secret. I can sense the emotions of those around me, joy, anger, sorrow, hatred, desire, etc. The emotions of the people around me are like mirrors reflecting onto me. The stronger and closer the emotions, the clearer the reflection. On one hand, it makes me quite perceptive, not easily deceived by others, but at the same time, for a long period, this ability caused me great trouble. I was forced to feel other people's emotions all the time, almost pushing me to the brink of a mental breakdown. In fact, this is also why I detest Yi Yang. When I'm slightly closer to him, what I sense is particularly displeasing. Mr. Fu is different, although your power is too strong for me to sense much, at least one thing I can confirm, that is you truly bear no malice. So that's how it is. It seems you've had a talk with your father just now? Fu Qian said, finding this ability somewhat novel. Of course, otherwise why would my father be at ease leaving? In fact, over the years as my ability has grown, my perception became more sensitive, and while I can slightly influence the emotions of others when we revealed a playful smile. Now, going against my will has become a rather difficult affair. I see the big picture now. In a sense, the psychic system's abilities still have their unique advantages, providing far greater value in specific situations than the physical system could. However, based on what she could currently achieve, Wen Li's reputation as an imminent 6th phase seemed a bit empty. Sometimes, I truly wish I didn't have such a talent. It invites trouble while failing to protect my own family. Wen Li sighed, again assuming the guise of a pampered young lady. You always have to look on the bright side. If it weren't for that ability, young Master Yi might not have given you a second glance. Fu Qian's comforting skill was always at hellish levels. Surprise flashed across Wen Li's face. You know about that? Indeed, before I became like this, although there were some business interactions, I was hardly given due respect, let alone such proactive help. But I fear they will be disappointed with my quasi-6th phase status. Chapter 19 Mirror 2 You shouldn't underestimate yourself, at least the proliferation gene of a middle-tier transcendent is quite valuable. Thank you for your affirmation. Unfortunately, I've always not wanted to owe this favor, otherwise there would have been no room for maneuver, so. Wen Li's expression was unprecedentedly serious. Regardless of whether your assistance was a spur of the moment or there are hidden matters, I sincerely beseech you once again, to lend a hand during the time to follow. Quite sincere, huh? But you might not know, someone has already asked me on your behalf, leaving me no choice but to do the kind of work I hate the most. I've said it before, duty calls, and it cannot be shirked. Fu Qian spoke languidly, telling Ms. Wen not to get excited. Speaking of which, the Wen family might not be a prestigious noble family, but they sure have too much money to spend. How come they don't have a single transcendent bodyguard? There are assassins who take money, there must be bodyguards who offer their services for pay. Fu Qian didn't believe all transcendents had such integrity. You're right, there's some hidden affairs in this. Wen Li's expression was somewhat embarrassed. Indeed, we had previously hired a transcendent bodyguard with a hefty sum, one whose strength was not much less than Master Ji's. Unfortunately, he met with an accident not long ago. What kind of accident? He was captured by the night watchman. There's actually such a thing. As capitalists, didn't you do a background check when hiring people? It was urgent, and the strength was undoubtedly our top priority at that moment, although we knew he was always on the night watchman's wanted list. We didn't expect such an incident, and it's very difficult to find another one in a short term. Seems like your relationship with the night watchman isn't that great. Our family business covers a wide range, with some in the gray areas, which might not be well regarded by the night watchman. Wen Li honestly admitted. It's obvious, if the relationship was a bit better, they wouldn't have done something so undermining. Fu Qian sighed deeply, finally understanding why the Wen family was in such a sorry state. The old cynic Captain Gu had speculated before that there might be the night watchman backing them up, thinking about it now seemed overly optimistic. So today, when you stepped in, I was truly unable to contain the joy in my heart. Thank you very much. Ms. Wen thanked him gravely for the 3rd time. Also, regarding the content of our conversation today, please keep it a secret. I don't want the Yi family to have too much of a negative impression before I make my breakthrough. Don't worry, I've always been tight-lipped. Fu Qian promised without hesitation, then lowered his voice. The problem is, have you thought about the fact that our conversation now has been overheard by your admirer? What? Wen Li was immediately shocked, raising her head and looking around abruptly. No need to look, there's someone clinging to the wall outside. Fu Qian continued in a hushed tone, then kicked the bench Wen Li was sitting on. Amidst a scream, Wen Li, along with the bench, flew out. Simultaneously, Fu Qian stood up abruptly and roared. Be careful, there's an assassin. Upon his words, the person clinging to the wall outside, akin to a gecko, paused, then began to move frantically. In fact, not long after sitting down, Fu Qian had noticed someone on the wall outside. It was possibly the effect of increased inspiration, as his perception was now extremely keen. The eavesdropper had been quite careful, not to mention silent in movement, but even using special techniques to flatten themselves against the wall. Even so, in Fu Qian's perception, it was as apparent as an X-ray. He even knew who it was, the little wolf girl he had kicked away the first time he entered the place. Speaking of which, the Wen family was quite unfortunate. Not only had their stronghold been infiltrated like a sieve, but they were also under the surveillance of their prospective in-laws. Holding the intention to see what the visitor wanted to do, Fu Qian hadn't revealed them right away. Now was about the right time to rattle the snake through the grass. With a roar, the alarm bells rang out, and Fu Qian grabbed something from the desk. It was a metal paperweight, exquisitely crafted and impressively large, clearly not cheap at a glance. He held it in his hand, weighing it like a brick, and, in the next moment, Fu Qian hurled it toward the wall. Boom! The Wen family mansion suffered again. Empowered by terrifying strength, the paperweight shot out like a cannonball, easily tearing through the opposite wall. Bricks and chunks of stone struck the swiftly moving figure behind it. Desperate screams echoed as a shadow was heavily thrown down from the wall. If he remembered correctly, wasn't this the 4th floor? By this time, when Xiuxian had rushed over, and seeing the hole in the wall and his daughter on the ground, his expression could only be described as splendid. Such a familiar scene. No mansion is grand enough to withstand this kind of damage. Rest assured, when you see the person on the ground, your face will look even worse. Now, Wen Li, the ever-resilient Kiki, had once again bravely stood up, her expression complex as she quietly comforted her father. As several people descended the stairs together, the infiltrator on the ground was already surrounded. But it seemed irrelevant whether he was surrounded or not, for the person on the ground laid there motionless, mangled. Struck unprotected in a vital spot and then having fallen from the 4th floor, this person was dead beyond doubt. Young Master Yi, who had gone to rest earlier, had long since arrived, and was now staring intently at the body on the ground with a face as dark as coal. The assassin has been slain. Fu Qian, not caring about his darkened face, pointed solemnly at the corpse on the ground, claiming credit. Just now, someone else infiltrated and attempted an ambush, but luckily, I discovered it. No matter what, it was best to firmly establish the identity of the assassin first. When Xiuxian's expression was a kaleidoscope of emotions. He wasn't foolish, and he could certainly detect the anomaly in Yi Ying's reaction. And with a little attention, one could notice that one from his entourage was missing. Was there any need to say who the person on the ground was? But indeed, the person was struck from outside the wall, labeling them an assassin posed no issue whatsoever. When Xiuxian felt irritated as well. He had just survived an assassination attempt in the daytime, and now, to his annoyance, someone was spying on his own turf. Even with his capacity to endure humiliations, it was difficult for him to maintain a pleasant demeanor at that moment. Thank you, Mr. Fu. Without you, Lil Li might have been in danger again. After mulling it over, when Xiuxian chose to express his gratitude earnestly. I didn't expect these people to be so patient, returning after being driven away, truly hard to guard against. After thanking Fu Qian, when Xiuxian let out a series of heavy sighs and turned towards Yi Ying and Master Ji. Because of this disturbance, Yi Ying and Master Ji were inconvenienced. Please accept my apologies. It's all right. Young Master Yi didn't respond immediately. It took a tug from Mr. Ji before he almost gritted his teeth and said a word. We heard the alarm and were worried there might be trouble, so we came to see. It's good that everything is fine. Mr. Ji, obviously more seasoned, spoke to Wen Xiuxian with a serious face. No disturbance to speak of, as we are here to help and will do our utmost. Thank you for your efforts. When Xiuxian exchanged pleasantries with him, seemingly oblivious to the red and blue locks of hair at the head of the corpse. Fu Qian knew this person had died in vain. He didn't harbor any particular hatred toward Little Wolf Girl that warranted her death. Little Wolf Girl was undoubtedly sent by Yi Ying to eavesdrop, and given Yi Ying's character, The slap from earlier was not something he could simply swallow. Coming to eavesdrop was very likely for Yi Ying's own sake, to understand Fu Qion's background and to find opportunities for slow revenge later. That was a natural human response. But to carry out such tricks at the Wen family's home indicated a fundamental distrust toward Wen Xiuxian and his family. If what Wen Li had said during the day reached their ears, it was difficult to predict their subsequent reactions. If he were to complete his mission, he needed to minimize any potential threats to Wen Li as much as possible. So, for various reasons, it was essential to intimidate them, to make sure they wouldn't dare pull any more stunts in the short term. Chapter 20 How did you get along with people 1 By the time the situation was dealt with, dusk had fallen, and the farce had come to an end. The tough day at the Wen family mansion had finally passed. In the lingering glow of the sunset, the luxurious abode was now riddled with scars, its battle damage coating at max. Fortunately, the place was large enough that with some tidying up, it was still habitable, but even so, a couple more events like today's could justify erasing it and starting anew. As the chief troublemaker, Fu Qion had successfully earned everyone's respect, fear, through his violent display today. Mr. Fu, you have worked hard today. I have already arranged your accommodation, said Wen Li, looking like she was on her last legs, but still mustering the energy to speak. She was one of the few willing to engage in conversation with Fu Qion. It was nothing. Fu Qion spoke nonchalantly, then saw young Master Yi shiver. Young people these days sure have a lot of spirit. After the extent of the commotion, Fu Qion did not believe in burying the hatchet with a smile. Offend to death then so be it. Whether young Master Yi wanted to flay him alive, Fu Qion couldn't care less. Based on previous events, this young master seemed quite keen on preserving his life. Fu Qion believed that after the incident with the flying corpse from the 4th floor, young Master Yi would calm down and not make any small moves until he figured out what Fu Qion was all about. That was all that was needed. The best part was that no matter how he investigated, he'd only find out that Fu Qion was a regular bodyguard, which would surely leave him paranoid. With that time, Wen Li should have enough to level up. Hopefully, she wouldn't be too disappointing by then. A night without incident. When Fu Qion woke up from the luxurious bed, daylight was already shining brightly. Ever since becoming a transcendent, Fu Qion found himself constantly in a state of abundant energy, making sleep somewhat unnecessary for him. But as a sleep enthusiast, he still habitually rested in bed. The bedroom prepared for his rest, though makeshift, was evidently lavish, not a mere guest room. It wasn't until Wen Li walked into the adjacent room yawning that Fu Qion finally confirmed he had been led to the master bedroom of the mansion. It seemed the Wen family truly were frightened. A maid had been waiting outside early, calling Fu Qion over for a meal. As Fu Qion arrived at the dining room, Wen Li was gracefully having breakfast, appearing much more refreshed. It was unclear if she had taken his advice, but the number of servants today was noticeably smaller. Listen to advice and eat your fill. Wen Xiuxian was quite pragmatic. Good morning, Mr. Fu, feel free to ask the kitchen to prepare whatever you'd like to eat. Wen Li greeted Fu Qion politely, smiling as she explained why Wen Xiuxian was absent. Father has some matters to take care of and left early in the morning. Rich people have their troubles, too. Fu Qion mused to himself, settling down to enjoy a few small dishes. The taste made the trouble worth it. Mr. Fu, regarding the security arrangements, do you see any areas that need improvement? I will have them fully cooperate with you. Wen Li showed the proper breeding of a well-born lady, only starting to inquire after finishing her breakfast. There certainly is a lot of room for improvement, so much so that there's no longer a need to improve. Fu Qion didn't even lift his head. He was telling the truth. Wen family's current security might seem tight, but that was under the assumption the enemy was a regular assassin. To a non-human that excelled in stealth and infiltration, it was as if riddled with holes. So you still recommend that I hide in a safe house? Wen Li sighed. Due to some reasons, unless it's absolutely necessary, I'd rather not resort to that. I'll discuss it with my father when he returns. As it turned out, the trouble arrived faster than Wen Xiuxian's return. Not long after, a servant rushed in with a tense expression to announce that a special guest had arrived, asking specifically for Fu Qion. Before Wen Li could say anything, the door was pushed open from the outside. A woman clad in all black with a poker face walked in. Though her attire was simple, her presence was commanding, like a drawn mace whose path no one dared meet with their gaze. She marched up to the dining table, her sharp eyes scanning over everyone's faces before they settled on Fu Qion. Mr. Fu? That's possible. Group Leader Tan, what brings you here today? The moment he saw who it was, Wen Li's expression turned particularly ugly. Seeing her target Fu Qion directly, he couldn't help but speak out as the host. Just a matter I need to discuss with Mr. Fu here. The woman with the surname Dan did not even glance at Wen Li while staring down Fu Qian with obvious hostility, gesturing to the side. Mr. Fu, please come with me. The people here are so arrogant, one after another. Fu Qian could naturally tell that this woman was no ordinary person, definitely a transcendent, with quite impressive strength. Could it really be that too much muscle causes one's brain to degenerate? Group leader Tan, what do you mean by this? Before Fu Qian could respond, Wen Li, who was beside him, was already panicking. Mr. Fu is currently working and it is not convenient for him to leave. This is the second time. Is Group Leader Dan targeting the Wen family on purpose? The second time? Fu Qian realized something. The Night Watchman? Wen Li nodded slightly, not forgetting to introduce her to Fu Qian. This is Miss Tan Mingsu, the group leader of the second group of the city's Night Watchman team. We have had some interactions before. Indeed. When the woman entered, Fu Qian had already sensed it vaguely. Last night, before going to sleep, he had taken the trouble to learn a little about the organization with which he had several encounters. In this world, the Night Watchman was one of the largest organizations and a particularly special entity, with almost all things related to transcendental powers under its control. With an exalted status and overwhelming strength, Night Watchman teams spread across various regions, maintaining the order of the entire transcendent world. Almost no one wished to oppose them. In fact, it was because of their existence that ordinary people could survive the struggles of the non-humans and maintain a normal life. No wonder this lady was so brazen. Anyone backed by such an organization could inadvertently develop the habit of being overbearing. As for the interactions mentioned by Wen Li, they must not have been pleasant experiences. Fu Qian recalled the incident Wen Li mentioned the day before. Having hired a powerful bodyguard, they unexpectedly had him taken away by the Night Watchman for being unclean. The second time must refer to that incident. How on earth does your family get along with people to deserve such undermining? While Fu Qian was contemplating, Wen Li had already started to complain. Group leader Tan had a reason for her last visit, and after understanding it, we fully cooperated. Today, you should at least give us a reason, right? A reason? Dan Mingsu seemed to hear something amusing. Ms. Wen is overthinking it. The Night Watchman isn't bored enough to target your family. As for Mr. Fu, surely you don't think you can kill someone here and act as if nothing happened? Chapter 21, How many of you can fight like this one? When did I ever kill someone? Facing Tan Mingsu's accusation, Fu Qian asked as if it were nothing. Still playing dumb? Tan Mingsu let out a cold laugh. The conflict here yesterday is already common knowledge. You personally killed the Transcendent. Do you really want to deny it? I'm sorry, but all matters related to Transcendents are under our jurisdiction. Since it involves the death of a Transcendent, you'll need to come with me. So you're talking about that? Fu Qian's expression remained utterly calm. Indeed, someone died here yesterday, but he fell to his death from the 4th floor. You can explain that slowly after you come back with me. Dan Mingsu spoke coldly, a fleeting murderous aura emanating from her. My patience has its limits. If you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for not being nice. Group leader Tan. Wen Li was getting a bit anxious at this point. Mr. Fu is a bodyguard we legally hired. The conflict was entirely because an assassin tried to harm me, and Mr. Fu was just fulfilling his duties. How could you be so indiscriminate? Upon seeing Wen Li's reaction, Dan Mingsu's face softened slightly. We are just asking Mr. Fu to assist with confirmation. If there's no problem, he will be back soon. After all, given the intense fight and the death of a Transcendent, we need to ensure everyone's safety. Please understand. This woman seems determined not to leave without taking me today. Fu Qian thought to himself. According to the data collected on the Night Watchman, they indeed had the right to inquire into any conflict involving Transcendents. But with the incident only happening yesterday, at the Wen family mansion, and now she's already here today, Fu Qian didn't believe there weren't other factors involved. Thinking of young Master Yi who hadn't shown up all day, Fu Qian had a hunch. So he still couldn't swallow his pride. It was very likely that after secretly investigating his background and finding nothing, he simply decided to stir trouble and let the Night Watchman bother him. Even if he couldn't use them to kill for him, the least he could do was to use the Night Watchman to probe for some of his secrets. Currently, it seemed he only had 2 choices. Choice 1, go with this group leader Tan, leaving Miss Wen here, to rely on a bunch of bodyguards and young Master Yi's people to protect her life for a while. Since the Yi family had intentions of marriage, they would generally not want this future daughter-in-law to die. Choice 2, refuse to cooperate, activate Shura mode, take out this group leader Dan Mingsu directly, and then deal with the endlessly coming Night Watchmen one by one, until nobody comes to bother him anymore while he completes his task. That feels a bit too sure-like. Although Miss Wen's life might not be safe if he left, the success rate of choice 2 was obviously not high. The key point was that Wen Li would probably be scared out of her wits and do something unpredictable. In the end, Fu Qian decided to cooperate for the time being and get a feel for the strength of the night watchman in this region. After all, if he really had to take the sure route, at least he'd have an idea of the strength of his opponents. No problem, then I'll come with you. Under Wen Li's worried gaze, Fu Qian followed Dan Mingsu out of the Wen family mansion. In the crowd, Fu Qian spotted Master Ji, who had clashed with him twice yesterday, but young Master Yi was nowhere to be seen. Fearing I would kill him in anger? Fu Qian instantly understood the reason. This person was obviously feeling guilty, worried that Fu Qian might guess it was his doing, and before following Tan Mingsu, out of fear, he might lash out and take him down, so he simply opted to hide and not show up. It's possible that right now, he's watching from some window. He really is small-minded and overly cautious. The journey was rather long. After lots of twists and turns, just when Fu Qian was about to lose his patience, the car finally stopped. Please. Dan Mingsu got out of the car first, and Fu Qian followed, seeing the night watchman's base for the first time. This place was much more down-to-earth than he had imagined. Contrasting with the scenic beauty of the Wen family's private villa, the night watchman's base was actually located in the middle of a busy city area. From the outside, it looked quite ordinary although the area was not small. Only after following Dan Mingsu inside the base did he feel something extraordinary. The building's interior was clearly meticulously arranged, with many areas made of special materials. There weren't many people coming and going, but each of them carried an air of authority and seemed to be of no ordinary strength. Some other relevant personnel will be here shortly. Dan Mingsu led Fu Qian into an office, gestured for him to sit down, and took out an exquisite notebook. Before we proceed, I need to confirm a few simple questions with you. Ask away. Fu Qian looked around as he answered lazily. Is Fu Qian your real name? Theoretically, all transcendent information should be registered internally with the Night Watchman, but I've checked all the records, and there's never been a record of you. Of course it is. As for why there's no record of me, it might be because I haven't been a transcendent for very long. Oh? Dan Mingsu rolled her eyes. Based on the current information, your strength is at least 6th phase. Are you trying to tell me that you went from an ordinary person to a middle-tier transcendent in just a few days? Can't I? The other night, I was observing the celestial phenomena when suddenly, I had a revelation that gave me insight. Clang. Dan Mingsu's notebook slammed onto the table. After calming down a bit, Dan Mingsu picked up the notebook again. Do you know who you killed yesterday? An assassin. And let me emphasize, I just injured him. It was his own fault that killed him. Moreover, as a professional bodyguard, I was merely fulfilling my duties. Professional bodyguard. Dan Mingsu was now so exasperated she laughed. A professional bodyguard with a monthly salary of 25,000, is that so? Your asking price really isn't high, is it? Slim profit, high turnover, what we're building is reputation. What's going on? Just as Dan Mingsu was about to go ballistic, the office door was pushed open with a creak, and a bespectacled man in his 30s came in. He is completely unreasonable, your turn to ask. Dan Mingsu snorted as she stood up. Masters always have distinctive personalities. The bespectacled man chuckled as he flipped through the notes and extended a hand toward Fu Qian, introducing himself. Mr. Fu, right? I am Chizu. Please don't take it the wrong way. The only reason we bothered you today is strictly due to our duties. After all, the sudden appearance of a middle-tier master in our jurisdiction is something we must get under control. As for the conflict, transcendents have strong life force, and fights and killings are inevitable. We can't interfere in every single case. Look, we're all colleagues here, and professional integrity is much better. Fu Qian nodded. You may proceed with your questions. We already have the basic information. The bespectacled man flipped through Dan Mingsu's notes. So, I'll ask the most intriguing question first. How did a master like you end up working as a bodyguard for the Wen family? Entrusted by someone. Who? The bespectacled man suddenly looked spirited. No comment. After asking a few more insignificant questions, the bespectacled man put the notebook aside. Thank you for your cooperation. You may leave now. Hey. Dan Mingsu panicked. How can you let him go? Based on the current data, Mr. Fu's past is quite clean, and the conflict was indeed part of his duties. As for the lack of previous records, now that we have them, it's resolved. The bespectacled man waved his hand to indicate to Dan Mingsu not to say more. Turning his head toward Fu Qian, Mr. Fu, if you have any questions, you can ask us as well. Questions? Fu Qian thought for a moment, then pointed at both him and Dan Mingsu. Inside this space, How many of you are as capable as you two? Chapter 22, 100% not back Constitution 1. How many of us are there like this? What do you want to do? Dan Mingsu had a wary look on her face. In fact, it wasn't just her. Chizu was also completely astonished and couldn't figure out why Fu Qian would ask such a question. Got it, not many. Fu Qian nodded. Oh, why do you say that? Chizu became interested. Fu Qian pointed at Dan Mingsu. Given her personality, if there were many, her reaction wouldn't be like this. It would probably be more like I have enough numbers to blast you into dust or something. Haha. Chizu was stunned for a moment, then burst into laughter, eventually slapping his thighs in sheer earth, completely disregarding the person with an ashen face beside him. You're not wrong, Chizu said after he finished laughing, pushing up his glasses. Mingsu is the leader of the second group, and I'm responsible for the affairs of the first group. There are quite a few night watchmen in this city, but to be honest, there are indeed not many at our level. But don't say I didn't warn you, our boss, Chizu said, pointing upwards. She's on a completely different level than us, you'd best not have any strange ideas. So that's how it is, plenty of minions, single digits of powerful minions, plus a big boss in charge. Fu Qian summarized the situation with gaming language, roughly estimating the scene he was facing in sure mode. Precious information, his trip here hadn't been in vain. Fu Qian nodded. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving. It was time to go back. Every second he wasted here increased the risk of having to start over. Don't you want to know why the Wen family is in this situation? Chizu suddenly said when he saw Fu Qian really getting up to leave. There was indeed a problem, but it was very unfortunate that he really had no interest in knowing. Time was Ms. Wen's life, his money, and his mission. However, to avoid arousing unnecessary suspicion, Fu Qian still reluctantly stopped. Let's hear it, but if I remember correctly, Group Leader Dan just said that the Wen family wasn't being specifically targeted. Actually, that's not wrong. There's no targeting, but the Wen family indeed hasn't received any special consideration. As long as we do our official duties by the book, that's enough to give them a headache, Chizu said, spreading his hands. Actually, we don't really have any prejudice against Wen Li, but the Wen family's business ventures are too widespread, even delving into some gray areas. They're registered with us, and although we don't manage some borderline stuff, we do keep some of the accounts in mind. Only the first sentence of these crap words has any value. Fu Qian glanced at Chizu. Is there even one clean aristocratic family out there? Could you guys really be bothered with such trivial matters? Go ahead and tell me, what kind of prejudice do you actually have against Wen Li? Chizu was taken aback again, then began to laugh, turning his head to Tan Mingsu. I'm liking this guy more and more, he's quite powerful, and he's smart too. He's good enough to be recruited as a formal member of the team. Ruthless and mysterious origins, Dan Mingsu snorted, giving only a two-word evaluation. You're right, Chizu said, taking out a cigarette from somewhere and taking a drag, immediately entering a pensive state. The problem indeed lies with Wen Li. Mental transcendents are not common, and we've actually been paying attention to her for a long time. Although her ability was quite weak in the early stage, this type of ability is still unprecedented and very valuable. As she continued to grow, we discovered more and more surprises, and even made her file a special focus, thinking that when the time was right, we could provide some proper guidance. However, it's regrettable that, not long ago, we received notice that her file's level was adjusted to observe and respond accordingly. Basically, that means to keep observation and not intervene, you understand? Understood. Fu Qian had felt something strange before, but he had not expected there to be such hidden circumstances. With the influence of the Night Watchman, they certainly wouldn't care about any benefits the Wen family might gain because of Wen Li. From holding high hopes to observe and respond accordingly, it could only be due to her own reasons. It seems his guess was not wrong, having any connection to the objects stored in the warehouse was somewhat abnormal. Of course, abnormal or not, he still had to carry out his mission. By the time he returned to the Wen family mansion, it was already noon. Chizu and his group were decent enough to send Fu Qian back. Fu Qian had now become a person of great interest within the Wen family mansion, with various versions of the reason he was taken away by the Night Watchman already circulating. Wen Li had been informed early on. She did not rashly come out to meet him but could still be felt sighing with relief through the intercom. Mr. Fu, they didn't give you a hard time, did they? As he walked into the living room, Wen Li couldn't wait to greet him. No, Group Leader Tan and the others were very enthusiastic, and we had quite a pleasant conversation. Fu Qian sized up Wen Li, making sure she hadn't encountered any problems during his absence. He remembered what Chizu had said at the Night Watchman base. Reliable or not, his mission was to ensure that this young lady successfully advanced to the 6th phase. But according to Chizu, she was quite unique. Even the night watchmen had adjusted their expectations, opting to observe and respond accordingly. If she never advanced, was he supposed to remain her bodyguard indefinitely? Quite a pleasant conversation. This comment clearly shocked Wen Li. When Tan Mingsu came to take someone away, her attitude had been quite unfriendly. Fu Qion's swift and safe return had already greatly surprised her, and with what he said, it was as if he had been invited as a guest. Well. Alright, do you want to rest for a bit? Wen Li didn't ask further. She was already very grateful that Fu Qion was able to hurry back so swiftly. There's no need. Fu Qion waved his hand dismissively and looked at Wen Li, asking the question he cared about most. When do you estimate you'll complete your advancement? When? Wen Li's expression changed. Does Mr. Fu have new arrangements? Don't worry, I have a feeling it won't be long now. I have been at the 7th phase for quite some time. I can feel that I'm only one step away from a breakthrough. But mental series advancements often require a certain opportunity, so it's hard to confirm the exact timing, but it will definitely be in the near future. Once I have advanced to the 6th phase, I will have the means to protect myself and won't delay you for too long. As she was earnestly explaining to Fu Qion, Wen Li suddenly got some information that made her face light up with surprise, and she rushed to open the door. Dad, how come you're back so soon? A wary Wen Xiuxian walked in. Things didn't go so well, so I decided to come back early. Wen Xiuxian's mood was obviously down, but seeing his beloved daughter brought a faint smile to his face. Mr. Fu is here too. I heard about the morning incident. It seems they didn't trouble you. Thank you for your efforts these past few days. No problem. Fu Qion silently stepped forward, politely talking to Wen Xiuxian while glancing at Wen Li. The latter's initial surprise had vanished, and she was now frowning at her father, her expression filled with perplexity. Something wasn't right. A chill flashed in Fu Qion's eyes, confirming a suspicion he had. The next moment, Ms. Wen was kicked and sent flying again. Chapter 23 Thug 1 out of 3 Almost the instant Wen Li was kicked away, a furious power engulfed exactly where she had stood moments before. Fu Qion watched with his own eyes as Wen Xiuxian's head swelled like a balloon until his entire body burst into a cloud of red mist. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. After sending Wen Li flying, Fu Qion moved forward to block the angle, and collided solidly with this tornado of flesh and blood. A thunderous tremor erupted, the intense shock making every organ in his body tremble. Not only that, the storm seemed to be mixed with countless tiny spikes, which, fortified by the powerful kinetic energy, frenziedly tore everything around to shreds. 3 seconds later, the storm dispersed. Fu Qion lowered his head and lifted his left hand. Below his shoulder, the skin had completely vanished, exposing flesh riddled with countless holes, in some places even revealing stark white bones. I never even took such severe damage in mortal combat. This thing's destructive power is actually quite impressive. Within the range of the blood-flesh storm, there was nothing left intact, not even the half-wall affected, which had turned into honeycomb coal. These assassins really do have extensive capabilities, able to create something with such strong lethality. However, the injury, though serious, was not fatal. Fu Qion expressionlessly straightened out the exposed blood vessels. The next moment, he kicked through the teetering wall with one foot. Gathering strength and using the recoil of the furious power, he instantly passed through the gap, flashing to the side of a person outside, and kicked out. It's you. It didn't matter whether it was Wen Xiuxian or not, the attack just now was not something a hypnotized commoner could deliver. Fu Qion did not believe that the assassins were so dedicated to their job that they would sacrifice their lives to complete the mission. Someone nearby must be controlling it remotely. So, while he was being showered by the blood-flesh storm, he had all his senses wide open, not missing any trace, and eventually he locked onto a particular aura. At this moment, the owner of that aura was blending in with the bodyguards who had rushed over, making his way outside. Boom. With a kick charged with furious power, it struck with lightning speed and terrifying momentum. The target could no longer pretend, his body twisted, and in an instant, grew longer by a good margin, then, with an odd pose, he dodged this lethal strike. However, what greeted him was a hand blurred with blood and flesh. Splat! Like a crushed tomato, Fu Qion's nearly fleshless left hand scored a hit with a true 9 sorcery white bone claw on his opponent. Thug, assimilation progress 1 out of 3, with invasion like fire and momentum like thunder. Congratulations on beginning to grasp the essence of thug form. The moment his grip went slack and the target stopped struggling, Fu Qion heard a prompt beside his ear. At the same time, a warm current flowed through his body. The sensations from the first use of thug form returned, only far more potent than before. After a surge of violent chi and blood, the exposed bones faintly exhibited a metallic sheen. The next moment, flesh regrew, wounds healed swiftly, and soon the bones were covered once again. Assimilation progress 1/3. Fu Qian took a deep breath, absolutely certain that he had undergone a transformation. If another attack came, he was confident he could dispatch Master Ji within 10 seconds. But by that logic, his thug form was just getting started, and even now, he had only assimilated a part of it. Invasion like fire, momentum like thunder. Was it referring to the way he just took out that assassin? It could also be a culmination of all his past performances. And these things that are referred to as the essence of a thug. So, it seems, the way to assimilate thug form is to become like a thug himself. Interesting. 1 out of 3 has already enhanced so much, I wonder what will happen when I achieve full assimilation at 3 out of 3. Fu Qian silently looked forward to it. Throwing the corpse on the ground, he retreated back into the room the way he had come. He glanced at Miss Wen Li, who was struggling to get up from the ground. The scope of the flesh storm wasn't too large, and with himself standing in front of her, the lady hadn't sustained much damage. However, there seemed to be blood on her forehead. Could it be from the impact when he had kicked her out? He couldn't expect too much after all. He wasn't a professional nanny, it was unreasonable to guarantee no harm every single time. It had to be said that the one who had died for their cause outside had been quite professional, and extremely discreet. He had felt something was odd about Wen Xiuxian just now, hence he had taken a second look at Wen Li. This girl's ability allowed her to sense the emotions of the people around her. Being father and daughter for many years, she should have been able to pick up on any anomalies more easily. Sure enough, it might be even beyond Wen Li's own realization, but the perplexed expression on her face indicated that she also subconsciously felt something was not right with Wen Xiuxian. Are you okay? Wen Li managed to stand up with the support of the wall, her voice trembling as she asked Fu Qian. Was that? It was probably an assassin. But he looked like father. It's not out of the question that it really was your father. Considering the opponent's skills in hypnosis and disguise, it was indeed quite probable that Wen Xiuxian had been captured and dealt with by them on his way out this morning. Wen Li was no fool, there was no need to comfort her with lies. He wouldn't have come back so soon. Wen Li mumbled subconsciously, then suddenly froze on the spot, her body rigid as she bent down to pick up something. It was a watch, deformed by the explosion, with countless tiny, honeycomb-like holes on it. A wave of agonizing wails filled the air, and Fu Qian heard a familiar prompt sound in his ears. Containment failed, sanity shattered, Wen Li has lost the potential for advancement. This can actually happen. Back in the warehouse, Fu Qian looked up at the sky speechlessly for a minute, feeling the joy of leveling up slightly diluted. Even with Wen Li alive, the mission could fail? Realizing that the deceased was indeed Wen Xiuxian, her emotional breakdown was understandable. But her sanity shattering had she gone completely mad? Silently choosing the playback of the event, Fu Qian quickly fast-forwarded through his journey thus far and came to a conclusion. Escort missions really shouldn't be undertaken. Thinking back, this mission may not have featured werewolves or evil gods like before, but it was no less perilous. The Wen family might appear glorious on the surface, yet danger lurked in every corner. Wen Li herself was as fragile as glass. Survival was not an easy feat. Now, there was even the possibility of failing without dying. Protecting 2 people was definitely more challenging than protecting just 1. And neither Wen Li nor her father were the type to easily be bossed around, getting them to obediently follow plans was no easy task. The situation was complex. Fu Qian fixed his gaze on the cocoon patterns of black and white on the mist gate. When faced with an issue so entangled and full of pitfalls at every turn, the best solution wasn't to stubbornly proceed but to change the approach. For example, sure mode. 1 sand point consumed, attempting containment again 1%. 3%. 10%. 50%. 98%. 100%, containment scene loading complete, don't look around. Captain Gu's familiar voice came through. Looking at the intact Wen family mansion, Fu Qian took a deep breath. Chapter 24 Mindset determines the way out, pattern determines the outcome. This was a race against time. Fu Qian kicked down the stone columns to trigger the alarms again, proceeding deftly and swiftly. This time, he arrived in front of Wen Li's room in less than 5 minutes. Kicking the door in, blowing up bowls, and rescuing the person all in one breath. However, this time he didn't kick Wen Li aside to face the javelin-like stone column. Taking a deep breath, a savage force converged in his right hand, and as the stone column flew towards him, Fu Qian punched out directly. In the deafening boom that followed, dust filled the air. The stone column, thicker than a man's embrace, was hammered into thousands of pieces, raining down like hail within the room. Fu Qian withdrew his right hand and turned to look at the ash-covered people in the room. Silence fell as everyone witnessed a scene akin to the descent of a god, their ability to think seemingly halted. Good, that was exactly the effect he wanted. May I ask? Wen Xiuxian was the first to snap out of it, carefully observing Fu Qion's face as if weighing his words. Sir. What's going on here? There's no time to explain. Fu Qion grunted, adopting the demeanor of a wise man with his hands behind his back, signaling Wen Xiuxian to look at the stone giant that had appeared in the courtyard. It's urgent, lead the way to the bunker, or your daughter is as good as dead. This. Wen Xiuxian's instinct was to deny, but recalling the terrifying scene of Fu Qion's stone-shattering punch, he swallowed his words. Although he had seen opulent bunkers built by wealthy elites before, when Fu Qion saw the bunker's massive metal door, nearly 2 meters thick, slowly opening, he realized he had underestimated the extent of their fear of death. This is it. Wen Xiuxian pointed inside the metal door. Once activated, this door can only be opened from the inside, it's impossible to open from the outside. The supplies inside are also sufficient to last a very long time, but after recovering from the initial shock, Wen Xiuxian started to hesitate again. Having a stranger suddenly appear in your house, insisting on ushering you into a bunker without a word of explanation, would make anyone suspicious. What's more, the stranger was dressed in a standard security uniform, the words Guai on his chest shining brightly. This had to be a transcendent of at least 6th phase, right? How come I wasn't aware that this security company was so formidable? Do we really need to hide in here? Who are these people after all? People capable enough to kill you all, and it's not we. Fu Qion pointed behind Wen Xiuxian. Only Wen Li and I will enter, everyone else leave. Without my command, no one is allowed to approach, or they'll face summary execution. Who the hell do you think you are, giving orders like that? As Wen Xiuxian stood dumbstruck, unable to speak, a voice roared from behind. Young Master Yi, who had rushed over upon hearing the commotion, could not hold back any longer. He probably hadn't seen what Fu Qion did just moments earlier. Fu Qion spared him a glance. Compared to Wen Xiuxian and the others, the group accompanying young Master Yi looked a lot cleaner. They must have only just entered the Wen family mansion when he smashed the stone column. You don't want to die, do you? Fu Qion didn't pay him any mind and turned to Wen Li instead. Ms. Wen had her head and face drenched with poison soup and then washed with lime. She looked quite pitiful at the moment. Even so, her beauty could not be concealed, and she now had an added touch of vulnerability that made her all the more appealing. No wonder young Master Yi was quick to protest upon hearing Fu Qion's suggestion. Wen Li, having had a scare not long ago, also showed a different kind of hesitation in her eyes. Can we go somewhere else? No. Confirming that her will to live was strong and that she wasn't on the verge of a mental breakdown, Fu Qion unceremoniously kicked her into the bunker and immediately activated the switch. How dare you? A roar came from behind. Young Master Yi, completely ignored, lashed out. A fierce gust of wind raced towards Fu Qion's back. Perfect? He stomped a deep pit into the alloy floor, using the recoil to meet the oncoming attack head-on. Be careful. A silhouette launched itself forward, reaching ahead of young Master Yi, attempting to intercept Fu Qion. I've been waiting for you. Master Ji, who had been silently posing as an expert, finally couldn't help himself. Facing an attack many times more fierce than young Master Yi's, Fu Qion didn't hesitate to meet it head-on. Fists and feet collided, and energy surged in all directions. The power from his recent upgrade sent Master Ji flying several meters away. It wasn't until then that young Master Yi's belated attack arrived. Fu Qion didn't dodge or evade, slapping young Master Yi's face directly, not only interrupting his attack but even sending him flying. He's beyond what we can handle. After landing and falling into a frenzy, young Master Yi was grabbed by Master Ji. Hurry and call the night watchman. The latter quickly spat out 2 sentences, then vomited a mouthful of blood with a wah. Undoubtedly, as the top expert present, his judgment was not off the mark. The metal door slowly closed, no one daring to block it any longer. Standing behind the door, Fu Qion looked at young Master Yi, his face a mix of fear, resentment, confusion, and various other emotions, and felt a strange sense of what the husband just saw. Imagination indeed is the source of filth. Mr. Fu is entirely about healing and saving people. Please refrain from conjecturing with such vulgar plot lines. Creak. With that final noise, the metal door finally shut completely, and the safe room fell silent. Fu Qion turned around. The space inside was quite spacious, with the Wen family clearly having invested a lot here. Wen Li had already gotten up, now leaning against the wall, sitting there. After his upgrade, he had more control over his strength, sure that his kick hadn't caused her any harm. As their eyes met, Fu Qion sensed something was off. This woman had even taken the time to wipe her face in the midst of everything. I can feel it, you bear me no ill will. Wen Li's voice trembled, but she still spoke while catching her breath. Can you tell me why you are doing this? To save your life, I've told you before. If it's with good intentions, can't we communicate in a more gentle way? We can't. Fu Qion's face was expressionless. In cycles you're unaware of, the gentle approach had already been tried. Of course, that was only relatively gentle. Then, may I ask how long we will stay here? Wen Li suddenly remembered another question. Fu Qion raised a finger. A week. It's not going to be a month, is it? Wen Li's expression was quite resistant. No, Fu Qion shook his finger. 1 day. Just 1 day? Wen Li's eyes lit up, clearly surprised by the answer. Does that mean the assassins will give up after today? No, it means you have 1 day to break through. Fu Qion again gestured with his finger. From now, start comprehending. If by this time tomorrow you haven't reached the 6th phase, I'll strip you bare and throw you out. Crying counts against the time too. Chapter 25. There wasn't much time left for her. Nothing is greater than the liberation of the mind. Contrary thinking is very important. After previous failures, Fu Qion's approach this time was very simple. There is no such thing as a thief-proof strategy that can last 1,000 days. He no longer thought about how to ensure Wen Li's survival but instead placed her in an absolutely safe spot to allow her to complete her promotion as quickly as possible. An old saying goes, grant time for tasks, rather than granting tasks time. Wen Li took a full 10 minutes to adjust her emotions, but even though she stopped crying, it was clear that she was still resistant. I don't understand, she said in a hoarse voice. You don't need to understand, you just need to make a choice, make use of every second to complete your promotion, or end up naked on tomorrow's news headlines. Also, let me remind you that even if you die here, it won't change how I handle things tomorrow. Fu Qion reminded the beauty of the cruel reality she faced. A beauty who wouldn't forget to wipe her face even in a life-or-death situation. He believed her potential was limitless when faced with such a threat. Can you at least tell me why you're doing this? Wen Li obviously had sound logical thinking and quickly came to terms with her fate. Still, she couldn't help but ask the question in her mind. Yeah, why are you doing this? To save your own life? He had indeed saved her more than once. But why make such an excessive request? A pervert who enjoys playing with human nature? You might be overthinking it. I was just passing by and noticed your unique bones indicating you're a cultivation prodigy. I took a special interest to enlighten you a bit and grant you an opportunity. I don't want this opportunity, is that okay? What the heavens offer, you can't refuse. But my abilities are greatly affected by my emotions. I really don't have the confidence to ascend under these circumstances. Didn't I already slap young Master Yi to cheer you up? Why would I be happy about that? Ah, how do you know that? In the end, Miss Wen was forced to accept her fate and gradually calmed down. Sitting upright, with eyes slightly closed, she adjusted her breathing. In the quiet space, her whole being seemed somewhat ethereal for a moment. Indeed, dealing with a smart person is simple. Fu Qion looked at Wen Li, who sat with her back to him, and felt reassured. A gem cannot be polished without friction. You being so ambitious puts me at ease. Wen Li's seated body visibly shivered. Just a friendly reminder, you have 23 hours and 35 minutes left. Seeing that Wen Li's shoulders twitched slightly as if she might be crying again, he nodded in satisfaction once he was sure she would not slack the slightest, then stood in place and closed his eyes. He wasn't planning to sleep, on the contrary, he could be said to have all his senses heightened, covering every corner. Wen Xiuxian had declared this place as secure as Fort Knox, but that was based on his own common sense. Fu Qion had witnessed the lightning railgun, and in his view, the defenses were merely sufficient to avoid some minor troubles. Like right now, for instance. All of a sudden, Fu Qion opened his eyes and blew a breath towards the space in front of him. An almost imperceptible distortion appeared in the air, a nearly transparent filament, which drifted aside with his breath. Without a sound, a deep gouge appeared on the wall. The original target of the thing had been his neck. The next instant, the air stirred again, and more than 10 of the same thin threads wrapped towards him from all directions. Fu Qion, however, made no move this time, letting them wrap around him. The incredibly sharp threads swiftly enveloped him from head to toe, and in the next moment, they constricted inward, intending to grind him into pieces. Feeling the threads nearly cutting into his flesh, Fu Qion took a deep breath. In the next instant, the sound of snapping filled the air as the threads entwined around his body broke piece by piece, scattering into the atmosphere. I've found you. At the same time, Fu Qion leaped high, tearing open the ventilation duct overhead. More of those fine threads tried to wrap around his hand but were seized in his grasp and yanked out forcefully. Humphrey! A figure leaped out from the ventilation shaft, glaring at Fu Qion. It was actually an acquaintance. Looking at the poker-faced middle-aged woman before him. Group leader Tan, you've aged prematurely. Fu Qian blew at the broken threads in his hand toward her. With their power gone, the threads were no longer transparent but had turned into gray-white strands of hair. Looking at the noticeably shorter hair on Tan Mingsu's head, if it wasn't for an accident with her hairdresser, it was quite clear where these came from. The night watchman arrived quite promptly. Recalling Mr. G's recent impersonation of the Jade Emperor, Fu Qian couldn't help but admire their efficiency in summoning help. "Who are you?" The impact of age on a woman is truly terrifying. Originally Tan Mingsu's expression was a mix of 3 parts solemnity and 2 parts confusion. After Fu Qian's comment, it almost entirely shifted to murderous intent. A tangible aura of killing intent crazily spilled out from her. Fu Qian remained unperturbed. Judging from past interactions, this woman had a rather explosive temper. Given the current situation, no matter how one looked at it, it seemed like he'd kidnapped Miss Wen of the Wen family and injured innocent bystanders. The only possibility for a peaceful exchange would be to surrender and go with her willingly. And that was a condition he could not accept. Better to enrage this woman, and in her state of infuriation, she might reveal more flaws which could be useful. Group leader Tan just tried to put me to death, and you still don't know who I am? Fu Qian blinked. There's a problem with your law enforcement attitude. That's not for you to judge. Answer my question or leave your last words, choose one, Tan Mingsu said with an icy gaze. Despite her fury, she was a seasoned transcendent and did not lose her composure further, much to Fu Qian's disappointment. Fu Qian ignored her and stretched a lengthy yawn. I choose neither. Obstinate fool. Tan Mingsu didn't speak further, and in the next moment, her hair moved on its own without wind, spreading out in all directions. Standing straight as if charged with static electricity. The tips of her hair once again extended and turned into those transparent threads, almost enveloping the whole room. As the threads waved, they sliced and stirred the air time and again. The entire room became an invisible meat grinder. One wrong step would lead to being hacked to pieces. If you're going to play dirty, you can't blame me. Fu Qian extended his arms in parallel, doing a chest-expanding exercise. Need to wrap things up quickly. Ms. Wen's attention had clearly been drawn by the arrival of reinforcements. Although she still sat there, she was no longer concentrating and even sneakily glanced backwards. He needed to help her focus solely on the task at hand. After all, she didn't have much time left. Chapter 26 Xiangjian One Time is Money. Having finished his stretching, Fu Qian grinned at Tan Mingsu. But don't worry, you'll soon be freed from such tedious matters. Tan Mingsu responded simply, her hair quivered, and countless fine strands moved toward the center, cutting towards Fu Qian as the radius. The same move wouldn't work on a saint fighter. Fu Qian took another deep breath and lifted his right foot. Boom. A foot powered with furious strength stomped onto the ground. The exploding momentum raced outwards, blowing away the myriad of thin strands in the air. Tan Mingsu's signature skill was naturally not that simple. The strands swirled and rolled back, but this lasted only for a breath before gathering again. A single breath was enough. A grating metallic ripping noise sounded as Fu Qian forcefully tore off the tabletop next to him. Almost everything inside the safe house was made of special metal, and this tabletop was even more excessively solid metal. It was very heavy in hand. Seeing this, a fluctuation of emotion finally appeared on poker face Tan Mingsu. It's too late for regrets now. Fu Qian didn't give her the chance to show off her skills, lifting the heavy tabletop to his chest. He turned, then let go. The next moment, the tabletop became a flying shield. With unstoppable kinetic energy, it flew towards Tan Mingsu's head. At the same time, Fu Qian's left hand spread open, silently firing 5 air bullets. Tan Mingsu's long white hair almost instinctively gathered in front of her in an instant, converging into a ball to attempt blocking the seemingly all-destroying tabletop. Fragments filled the air, the tearing sound was incessant. The sharpness of the threads was staggering, the seemingly indestructible metal tabletop was instantly split into quarters and forcefully cut into fragments. Sharp, but pointless. Fu Qian was right, even if reduced to smithereens, every metal fragment still followed its original trajectory, resolutely continuing towards Tan Mingsu's head. They even turned into a spray of shrapnel due to the fragmentation. Tan Mingsu clearly knew this too, as she awkwardly moved several meters laterally, narrowly dodging this storm of deadly needles. The metal shrapnel smashed directly into the wall behind her, creating a honeycomb pattern of deep pits. However, the next second, the pupils of Tan Mingsu, who just avoided a fatal shot to the head, suddenly enlarged, and her nearly unbalanced body shifted laterally again. Even so, an invisible bullet still struck her waist, splattering blood. Not bad. To think she didn't fall. As expected of the night watchman leader, she is much stronger than that Mr. G. Huff huff. Panting heavily, one hand covering the wound on her waist, Tan Mingsu's face was extremely unsightly. When she first received the news, She had heard a general description, but she never expected this guy to be much more terrifying than imagined. What kind of monster is this? Ambush, despicable and shameless. Someone who uses that thing as a weapon doesn't seem qualified to talk about me. Fu Qian pointed at her hair. Are you ready? Ready for what? Dan Mingsu had no interest in talking to this guy, but she didn't mind if she had a chance to catch her breath and tend to her wounds. Last words. Fu Qian slowly spoke 2 words, but his eyes weren't on her. Instead, he was staring at Wen Li in the corner. At that moment, Wen Li was turning her head away, her mouth wide open in an O shape, as if unable to accept what had just happened. As their eyes met, Wen Li, as if electrocuted, abruptly turned her head back, shutting her eyes tight, focusing inward. Who on earth are you? Dan Mingsu uttered the classic line of impending doom. A hermit from beyond this world. As Fu Qian replied, he picked up an ashtray from the ground. This had just fallen from the table. Hold the line, I'll rescue him first. Just then, a dark shadow flashed overhead, as someone actually leapt down. Around 30 years old, wearing a black top, with gold-framed glasses. Chizu. Seeing the newcomer, Dan Mingsu almost instantly regained her strength, her voice filling with momentum. The ferocity and power demonstrated by her opponent just moments earlier had nearly made her lose confidence. Although she felt it was unnecessary, as she watched Chizu charge toward Wen Li, she still bit her teeth and once again mobilized all her transparent filaments to attack Fu Qian. Clang! A loud noise echoed, and Chizu's figure stopped abruptly, standing a few meters away from Wen Li. In front of him, the wall was deeply indented by an ashtray that Fu Qian had thrown. You'd better stay away from there. Fu Qian, dodging Dan Mingsu's attacks with a leisurely stroll, held 2 table legs he had just pulled out and walked up to him. Turning his head towards Wen Li, who was almost standing up. Do you really think he's here to save you? What do you mean? Wen Li had been thrilled to see new reinforcements arrive, nearly standing up with a shudder. But now, Fu Qian's words left her baffled once again. Fu Qian said nothing but pointed to her head. This is... Realizing her own panic, Wen Li took a breath to calm her emotions. The next moment, she took a step back in horror, staring at Chizu, who was not far from her. You're not. Who are you? I am not. Chizu suddenly revealed a ferocious smile, his facial features quickly melting and morphing, and in the blink of an eye, he became another man's face. Ignoring Wen Li, he turned to look at Fu Qian. I'm a bit curious, how did you know? Do I even need to ask? This one here was the one who took the job to kill you. Fu Qian replied to the dumbfounded Wen Li on the side. You really are popular, both those who want to kill you and those who want to save you are eager to come in. As for how I knew? Fu Qian then turned back to the fake Chizu. Guess, he. Of course, Fu Qian wouldn't tell him that he could recognize him because he had killed him once before and had memorized his scent. That's right, this guy was the one who had controlled Wen Xiuxian last time. My disguise was absolutely perfect? The man gritted his teeth. Indeed, very similar. Look at that brainless one over there, didn't she completely fail to notice? Fu Qian pointed to Tan Mingsu, whose face turned a deep red in an instant. What's your name? After mocking Tan Mingsu, Fu Qian shifted his attention back to Assassin Brother. If you want to keep it confidential out of professional ethics, that's fine too. Your characteristics are still quite clear, and I'll just look it up after I finish you off. This guy caused him to fail the mission last time due to Wen Li's shattered psyche. Today he was certainly not going to get away. Yingjian, I am indeed doing this for money. The man looked at Fu Qian and started to laugh. You're strong, and I indeed have no confidence that I can beat you, but if you really want to kill me, I advise you not to be impulsive. Rip. He tore open the upper part of his shirt. Chapter 27 Scarlet Frenzy. In a narrow room where a fight could break out at any moment, a man suddenly tore his shirt to shreds. The action of Yingjian was undoubtedly horrifying, causing Fu Qian to frown. Even more horrifying was the body revealed underneath the torn clothes. A web of dark red bloodlines covered his entire upper body, deeply etched into each piece of flesh. With every breath he took, the bloodlines seemed to wriggle slightly, as if they could come to life and take flight at any moment. Scarlet fever. At this moment, Tan Mingsu behind him started shouting. As expected of group leader Tan, you recognized it at a glance. Yingjian wore a look of pride, flashing a provocative smile at Fu Qian. This should help cool you down, right? Mysterious master from parts unknown. It won't. Fu Qian coldly flexed his wrists. If you have nothing else to say, consider this your last words. Wait a minute. This time it was Yingjian and Tan Mingsu both shouting together. Seeing that Fu Qian was really preparing to kill, their reactions were remarkably in sync. The smile on Yingjian's face had frozen. Are you crazy? You'd rather die with me than let me go? Are you trying to get us all killed? Dan Mingsu was also a mix of shock and anger. If you kill him, once the scarlet fever spreads, we'll all be dead. Is this thing that powerful? Fu Qian frowned. You don't recognize scarlet fever? Dan Mingsu's mouth hung open, incredulously staring at Fu Qian. I don't. I thought he was undressing to show me his scars, to tell me he's a wounded soldier fighting on, determined in spite of disabilities. Determined in spite of disabilities, my ass. Dan Mingsu and Yingjian both felt like spitting blood. Scarlet fever, you can think of it as a type of poison, as well as a curse. Finally calming down, Dan Mingsu quickly explained. Once infected, the blood in the body gradually heats up until it boils. As the flesh throughout the body decays, blood vessels will gradually move to the surface, forming these blood-red webs. It's said that if the host is strong enough, these vessels can completely separate from the body after death, becoming independent entities, even possessing the characteristics of truly being alive. This thing is extremely infectious. If you kill him here, it will fill the space instantly, and none of us will be able to escape. However, it's not without its benefits. After being infected, it significantly enhances speed, strength, and overall combat ability, to some extent acting like a stimulant. Taking a deep breath, Dan Mingsu looked at Yingjian. Worthy of being the renowned shadow of obliteration, able to obtain such a thing. This thing is very expensive, it took a lot of effort to get, and I never planned to use it here. Finding a sympathetic ear in Dan Mingsu's words, Yingjian regained some confidence and snorted. Unfortunately, an unexpected variable has arisen, and I've had to use it as insurance. Have you not considered the consequences of what you're doing? Dan Mingsu gritted his teeth. Don't worry, if I dared to use it, I'd have made sure to take full measures. After I send her off, there will be plenty of time to deal with this trouble. Yingjian gestured towards Wen Li, but his gaze was fixed on Fu Qian. Shadow of obliteration, sounds like a group? Fu Qian ignored him, looking instead at Dan Mingsu. That's right, a notorious group of assassins, 3 transcendents in total. They're responsible for many bloodbaths and have always been on the Night Watchman's wanted list. Let me think, there is also a stone man who can enlarge his body, and a professional who is good at hypnosis and poisoning? That's right, those 3 always act together, with Yingjian being the absolute core. I see, that all lines up then. Fu Qian nodded, satisfied. You 3 brothers owe me too many sand points. Though I don't know where you came from. You are undoubtedly very strong, and I admit I'm no match for you, even with the addition of scarlet fever. Yingjian looked at Fu Qian. But now, the power has returned to my hands. And I have to thank you for bringing people here, allowing the scarlet fever to maximize its effect. Now you only have 2 options, step aside and let me kill Wen Li, or kill me and we'll all die together, and Wen Li will still die. I think even a child would make this choice. Of course, we can also keep this standoff going, but in no more than an hour, the scarlet fever in my body will erupt, and the outcome will still be the same. Do you hear me? After Yingjian finished speaking at length, Fu Qian instead turned to Wen Li and shouted. You're going to die, how does it feel? Wen Li's body shuddered again, barely managing to stand by leaning on the wall. Of course, her feelings were terrible. Today, far too much had happened. Since a while ago, a series of changes had occurred in the blink of an eye, and her emotions were like a roller coaster. First, she was poisoned, then she was rescued, followed by being held hostage by her rescuer, and then informed she only had 1 day to live. Fortunately, the night watchman arrived in time to rescue her, but the person holding her hostage was too strong. Just as reinforcements arrived and hope appeared, another night watchman turned out to be an assassin in disguise. Now she was fully caught in a no-win situation, and for a moment she felt utterly hopeless and exhausted. What does waiting for death feel like? Tell me. Fear, and perhaps a hint of relief, Wen Li inhaled, her voice trembling. You can mock this weakness, but I am not one of you, accustomed to life and death. Please forgive me for not being able to face it calmly. Very good, you are honest enough. Fu Qian didn't ridicule her as expected, instead, he praised her. Now, watch closely. The next moment, Fu Qian's figure disappeared from where he was. You! A strong sense of crisis hit Yingjian, and even before he could dodge, his neck was grabbed by an iron pincer-like hand, and he was slammed against the wall behind him with a clang. Fu Qian, don't be rash. This scene made Dan Mingsu turn pale instantly, unconsciously stepping back several paces. Chizu will bring people over soon. Don't fool yourself. You cannot hear what is said inside from the outside. Are you sure that after this Chizu arrives, they will still look for the night watchman? Now, would you like to hear my opinion? Fu Qian, holding Yingjian by the neck, slowly lifted him into midair with a smile on his face. Using mutual destruction as a bargaining chip to complete your mission, it looks courageous. Unfortunately, your fearlessness is based on the belief that you will absolutely not die. That is completely different from true bravery. Look at you now, even when you have fallen into my hands, you subconsciously dare not fight back, afraid that the thing on your body will explode. Hasn't this helped you recognize your true nature? Fu Qion's grip tightened, and Yingjian's blood vessels visibly twitched as if they might burst open at any moment. We can talk. Talk. With his last ounce of strength, Yingjian barely spat out a few words. Mutual destruction is unnecessary. You still don't understand. It's very necessary, extremely necessary. Fu Qion shook his head as he looked at Wen Li. Do you understand now? The fear of dying every second surged in Wen Li's heart. Yet seeing Yingjian, who had been so arrogant just moments before, being held like a dog in someone's hand, gave her an odd sense of relief. Feeling the violent shift in her emotions. The next moment, Wen Li fell into a strange peace. I seem to understand. Chapter 28. Swallowing one with Wen Li's words, a silent storm swept through the entire space before quickly dissipating into nothingness. In terms of intensity, the impact was no more than a breeze against the face, but Fu Qion felt that something was different. Before he could fully savor it, a non-human screech echoed through, causing his eardrums to ache. The Yingjian he was choking in his hand began to struggle violently. Has it gone mad from fear? Fu Qion glanced at it. The top-tier assassin who had just been suggesting a negotiation now had bloodshot eyes and a throaty growl like that of a beast, almost heedlessly twisting its body. A snapping sound was heard. The Yingjian, which had all along been unable to break free, suddenly had its neck broken. What was more bizarre was that the break was already dry as kindling, without any blood flowing out. The now beheaded Yingjian did not stop struggling, in fact, its movements became even more frenzied. As the sound of wind rang out, Fu Qion twisted his head, dodging a claw aimed at his own skull. The missed claw, under the force of its momentum, led to the already decaying arm breaking off as well. Just as before, no blood flowed out, but the dark red streaks of blood that had covered the surface of the arm detached all at once. Then came the shoulder, the chest, the upper body. Like a cicada shedding its shell, the dark red bloodlines pulled themselves out from the corpse of the Yingjian, bit by bit, and quickly slid onto the wall, tightly clinging to it. With the Yingjian dead beyond dead in his hand, Fu Qion threw the remains aside. At this very moment, his head felt as if a grenade had gone off inside it. An extremely violent urge to slaughter filled his mind, stimulating every nerve, and shaking his thoughts to the brink of collapse. Every cell in his body became agitated, as if only the bloodiest of killings could quell it. Hiss. Taking a deep breath, Fu Qion looked back. Wen Li was standing still with her eyes tightly shut. Still pale and frail, but the aura she now gave off had visibly changed, enshrouded with a hint of mystery. Further away, Dan Mingsu had completely collapsed, hugging herself tightly and trembling in a corner. Countless transparent strands formed from her hair were chaotically entwined around her body, preventing anything from approaching. Could that invisible storm amplify a person's emotions? Fu Qion's mind stirred, trying to analyze the current situation with the remnants of his reason. Clearly, the Yingjian had been affected. Previously, it was only focused on escaping, so it had just now desperately tried to break free from his grip. Exponentially unexpected was that Dan Mingsu was the same. That woman was far less brave than she appeared. And to think she's a night watchman. As for Wen Li, the storm had obviously been released from her, which made her the source of the anomaly. From this perspective, his plan to stimulate Wen Li with the pressures of death and fear had succeeded. Although the mission's success notification had not yet come, Wen Li was clearly undergoing a transformation. As to whether this was the leveling up opportunity she mentioned, that remained to be tested. Crack. With a muffled sound, Fu Qion's right hand was forcibly broken. There was no choice. Had he not done it, he would have already pounded the people around him into mincemeat. However, within a matter of seconds, the broken hand firmly healed. Breaking Wen Li would make it stop. In the midst of cracking sounds, Fu Qion broke one hand after another, standing still and forcing himself to calm down. Breaking Wen Li was easy, but the difficulty was not to hurt her, physically. Just then, a wave of crimson turmoil rolled before his eyes. Amidst a bout of shaking, the thing that had detached itself from the body of Yingjian on the wall had curled into a spiked ball. Not only that, but the ball was expanding wildly, countless blood-colored vessels twining together, corroding and devouring everything they encountered. The closest to it was Wen Li, who had remained unmoving. In 10 seconds at most, this person would breathe their last and the young genius would perish. Fu Qion quickly made a judgment. But if he smashed this thing, the crimson fanaticism would disperse. He didn't care for himself, but the question remained whether Wen Li, even though she had leveled up, could survive was still an unknown. The moment the two choices appeared in his mind, Fu Qian felt his brain become a muddle, barely able to think. Indeed, the emotions of indecision had also been amplified. He watched as that thing grew wildly, expanding several times in the blink of an eye, now only a step away from Wen Li. To kill it without breaking it was a bit complicated. The more stringent the requirements, the broader the thought process had to be. Fu Qian took a step forward, and the next moment, he completely released the suppression of his frenzied killing intent. Crackle! A burst of bloodlight, and his right hand, which had been restored, left a deep, unfathomable wound on his own chest. Driven by the frenzy of the killing intent, his body's metabolism was activated to the extreme. Almost in an instant, the cells at the wound grew wildly, turning into sharp fangs. Inhaling deeply, the split in his chest rapidly tore open wider, and in half a second, it turned into a gaping maw full of sharp teeth. Fu Qian opened it towards the dark red mass. The mass, now several times larger, had no chance to avoid and was swallowed whole. The mouth snapped shut, and the mass began to struggle fiercely. However, no matter how much it lurched from side to side, it was still firmly suppressed by the frenzied state of the cells, finding no way out at all. After who knows how many collisions, the mass finally burst and disintegrated. A scorching red mist escaped, yet it was still locked tightly in Fu Qian's chest, not a wisp getting out. Half a minute later, Fu Qian stepped forward and kicked Wen Li's body. Ah! Wen Li let out a scream, opened her eyes, and jumped up from the ground. Seeing her get up so briskly, there was no need to ask, she had definitely reached the 6th phase. Fu Qian could feel the frenzy inside him dissipate in an instant. It was indeed because of her. Leveling up in the psychic domain is such a hassle. Mr. Fu, thank you for your help. Looking around, Wen Li seemed to understand what had happened. A look of surprise appeared on her face, and she bowed deeply to Fu Qian. But Fu Qian didn't engage in conversation. Instead, he stared at Wen Li's eyes, which were now much deeper than before, while a voice echoed in his ears. Wen Li's death, containment failed. The next moment, the scene in front of him rapidly fell apart, and Fu Qian was back in the familiar warehouse. Evaluation, madness to the extreme, kill, Yingjian X1, special kill, Crimson Angel X1, special kill reward, Tyrant's Fist, current sand points, 33, would you like to play the event recap? To think this could also fail, his intuition wasn't wrong, this mission was much harder than it appeared on the surface. Fu Qian took a breath but didn't do anything like smashing the keyboard. Instead, he stood in place and directly chose to review the incident. He needed to confirm something. Wen Li was standing right in front of him, having successfully advanced to the 6th phase, yet the prompt was death and containment failure. Unless she was not Wen Li. Skipping ahead all the way to the end, Fu Qian watched Wen Li bow and then stand up. The same face, the exact same expressions, but compared to before the upgrade, there was an extra hint of evil in the depths of her eyes. Chapter 29, It's impossible to work overtime. 1, Tyrant's Fist, weapon, effect, can unleash the Scarlet Whip to ravage enemies, each lash causing the target to lose their sanity. The Tyrant's Fist usually takes the form of a whip. Fu Qian looked at his special kill reward. It was the first time he had received a weapon after so long. But the appearance of this weapon really challenged one's imagination. With such a domineering name as the Tyrant's Fist, it was actually a ring. This ring was clearly not made of metal, but rather of numerous lustrous fibers twisted together, its whole body a dark red, and even a bit warm to the touch. Crimson Frenzy? It was really hard not to associate it with that thing. Fu Qian had never worn the ring in his life. He picked up the Tyrant's Fist hesitantly, made a domineering gesture with his right hand, and slipped the ring onto it. His blood surged, and Fu Qian flicked his right hand, casting a whip made of twisted blood vessels and muscle that flashed through the air and disappeared. The strength and speed were good, and the activation was quite concealed, almost as if his arm had extended. Not bad, it seemed to make up for his lack of mid-range attack methods. He had the air bullet for long range before, and he feared no close combat, but with this thing, he could be flexible, long or short, firm and unyielding blade. As for the effect of losing one's sanity, Fu Qian thought for a moment, flicked his arm, and whipped himself on the back with a scarlet whip. Amidst the splattering of fresh blood, a burst of ferocious killing intent flashed through his mind and vanished. Excellent. After eating such disgusting things, there was finally some consolation. Fu Qian nodded in satisfaction and reached out to touch the mist gate before him. Consuming 1 sand point to reattempt containment. 1%, 5%, 18%, 50%, 99.5%, 100%, containment scene loading complete. Now it was time to do his job. Overtime was out of the question. Skills, Air Bullet, Visceral Critical Strike, Cat School, Weapon, Tyrant's Fist, Current sand points, 32, the glimmering waves, the Wen family lakeside mansion once again came into view. Don't look around. In the face of the serious Captain Gu, Fu Qian patted the shoulder of his slacker's leader. I know. Sneaking in through broken columns, kicking in doors and smashing bowls. With one kick he sent Miss Wen flying, turned around to smash an incoming stone pillar, then picked up Wen Li and made his way to the underground safe house. The moment the safe house door closed, Fu Qian saw young Master Yi, alerted and rushing over, being firmly held back by Master Ji. How long do we have to stay here? In the safe house, faced with Wen Li's question, Fu Qian once again held up a finger. A week? No, it's an hour. Fu Qian shook his head. If you're not at 6th phase in an hour, I will peel off your skin. I'm sorry, but this is an impossible task for me. Maybe you could just get started. Wen Li stared blankly at Fu Qian's face, then after a while, let out a bleak smile. This was never your mission. Fu Qian blinked. Come out. I don't understand what you mean. Wen Li's eyes were full of confusion. Crackle. The heavy metal tabletop was yanked off once again by Fu Qian. The next moment, the tabletop was hurled overhead, directly shredding the mouth of the ventilation duct and solidly blocking it. With a resounding boom, the entire safe house couldn't help but shake. You have 58 minutes left. Fu Qian continued to watch Wen Li with an expressionless face. The latter stared straight back at Fu Qian, and after a long while, her face broke into a smile. I really can't deal with you. But is 1 hour really not enough? The previous pitiful hesitance had vanished, and Wen Li walked elegantly to the side and sat down. Just as I thought, I knew there was something strange about you. How should I address you? Wen Li is fine, isn't it? Essentially, I am the same person as her. Wen Li blinked, crossing her legs and propping them up. Even though I don't know why you insist on me coming out, it's quite nice to have someone to talk to. Many times, having a talent is not a fortunate thing. Over many years of growth, being forced to listen to countless people's innermost thoughts, sensing their emotions, those voices are so noisy that you might forget what your own original feelings were. Amidst endless troubles and hesitations, one day, I became nice storytelling, but unfortunately, I hate when my time is wasted. Before Wen Li could finish, an air bullet grazed her forehead, causing a stinging pain on her scalp as countless strands of hair fell. You can be anything, but you are definitely not Wen Li. Fu Qian withdrew his hand, saying lazily. Why would you say that? Wen Li sat up straight, her expression becoming grave for the first time. Nonsense, if you were a split personality product of Wen Li, I wouldn't bother with you. No matter which one of you advances to the 6th phase, my mission is complete, and afterwards, you can do whatever you like. But the problem is, last time Wen Li clearly succeeded in advancing to the 6th phase, yet the notification I received was that the Wen Li's death mission failed. The only explanation is that even within the same body, this thing is a completely different entity from Wen Li. This is also the reason Fu Qian only gave an hour this time, and the threat changed from stripping and throwing out to killing directly. Last time, this entity never showed up in the face of the stripping threat, indicating she didn't care much about that. Sure enough, Wen Li was terrified by the threat of being stripped, but now she seemed resigned to her fate, and this entity clearly cared more about life and came out immediately. Of course, Fu Qian wouldn't divulge these thoughts, just snorted coldly. I have been wandering around for many years, seen countless women, and have long developed discerning eyes. Your trivial tricks can't fool me. You are free to keep making things up, but just a friendly reminder, you only have 50 minutes left. You can call me Yvette. The fake Wen Li's expression completely cooled down. You are indeed somewhat unique. Thank you for the compliment. Can you reveal your true origin? This was indeed something Fu Qian was curious about. Intuitively it was the key to Wen Li's connection with the containment item. 292, Cocoon Chamber. You guessed right, I was born from her, but I am indeed not her. But what I said earlier was not entirely false. The pain and confusion Wen Li encountered were real, and I was born from the intense emotional turbulence that couldn't be dissipated. Of course, she never knew about my existence. In a sense, I am the power of the transcendent itself. Wen Li is just the soil in which I grew. For this reason, as long as she can advance to the 6th phase, I will be able to fully revive from inside her, and she will vanish forever. I believe the things I've said have shown enough sincerity, right? Yvette fixed her gaze on Fu Qian. No matter what your goals are, I must tell you clearly that it is impossible to advance to the 6th phase within an hour. Now I have completely taken over the body, and with the accumulation having reached its limit, all you need to do is give me one more day, no, 5 hours, and I will be able to attempt to fulfill your request. Yvette broke into a sweet smile, grabbing Fu Qian's hand and pressing it onto her dazzlingly white thigh. During this process, I don't need to be so quiet, you can use the extra time however you want. The touch was smooth as if touching condensed milk. Fu-Kion looked carefully and, even with the most critical gaze, couldn't find a single flaw. Coincidentally, I happen to have some special skills for use. Chapter 30 Whipping Through the Glass. One special skill? Yvette looked at Fu-Kion with puzzlement. Yes. The latter flicked his wrist, and a scarlet whip appeared out of nowhere, creating a beautiful whip flower. Looking at the blood vessels and tendons on the whip, Yvette's expression instantly became as colorful as could be. You! Psychopath! Yvette could certainly tell that this whip was not a kinky toy but a bona fide weapon. Her heart sank as she looked at Fu-Kion, unable to understand. What on earth do you want to do? How does this benefit you? Smack. In the face of her accusation, Fu-Kion didn't utter a word, answering her with his actions instead. Accompanied by another crisp crack, a deep mark was left on Yvette's alabaster arm. Taken by surprise, the intense pain made Yvette scream miserably. However, the next moment, something even more terrifying happened. A chaotic and violent thought arose in her mind, causing her sanity to waver. Why would you do this?